Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Fantasy. It turns out that I am a peerless god of war. Chapter 61. A long time. Only then did the angry flames of Ning Xuanwu dissipate a lot. Master, please calm your anger. Seeing this, Yao Ling'er came out in a timely manner and said, but now, I really have to make plans for the next step. Master, what do you think? Ning Xuanwu's face was gloomy, but he had to make plans for the future. After thinking about this, he raised his head to look at Yao Ling'er and said softly, Ling'er, today is the worst day in the history of my Xuanwu sect, so the future Xuanwu sect will have to rely on you. Rely on me? Yao Ling'er opened her red lips in surprise. Ning Xuanwu nodded solemnly and glanced helplessly in the direction of the martial arts hall. Although he was unwilling, facing such a peerless master, he did not even have the courage to take revenge. Seeing Ning Xuanwu like this, Yao Ling'er felt uncomfortable, and could not help but ask, Master, what the hell is there in the martial arts hall, how could it be? Hearing this, Ning Xuanwu twitched the corner of his mouth and sighed, and then he said with lingering fear, 4 martial sects, 1 martial saint and even martial emperor. What? Although they guessed that the people in the martial arts hall would be very strong, when Ning Xuanwu told the truth, everyone couldn't help but gasp. This small martial arts hall actually has 4 martial sects, and a martial saint or even martial emperor. No wonder. It's no wonder that someone as strong as Ning Xuanwu is so miserable. So, Yao Ling'er frowned and looked at Ning Xuanwu. So I want you to stay in Pingzhong City. Ning Xuanwu tightened his pupils and said, the foundation of my Xuanwu sect is here. Although it has been rubbing against Qingshanmen for thousands of years, the two sides can still maintain a balance. But now, this equilibrium is broken. Speaking of this, Ning Xuanwu showed deep worry on his face, and then said viciously, Lu Qingshan, this old skinny, I don't know what conspiracy and tricks he used to get in touch with the young man in this martial arts hall, and he also won a peerless divine sword. Just imagine, if Lu Qingshan gets something good from these masters again, will Lu Qingshan, who is just like us, will let us go? And he got the benefits of a master, will we still be opponents? I have to say that although Ning Xuanwu has a fiery temper, as the head of a sect, he usually thinks about issues that are relatively long-term. When everyone heard the words, they immediately understood the pros and cons. Face, showing a deep dignified color. So master wants me? Yao Ling'er asked nervously. Ning Xuanwu sighed and said with an ugly face, the sky shocking stone and Zunji cloak can't be taken back, and it is impossible to avenge this revenge today. Although I can't swallow this sigh, in the face of absolute strength, we have nothing to do. Quote, on the contrary, we must try our best to please and get close to the young man, at least to do the same as Lu Qingshan. Master, I can understand what you mean. Yao Ling'er said worriedly. But, the two brothers Wufeng didn't talk about it before, but today's matter, the two sides have already forged a relationship, we should how to please and get close to him. So, this is the reason why I want you to stay. Although you met him last time, it was after your disguise that he didn't see your true appearance. Having said that, Ning Xuanwu took a deep breath, looked at Yao Ling'er with solemn eyes, and sounded word by word. Therefore, I want you to do everything possible to seduce him and become his woman. What? Yao Ling'er opened her red lips. Never thought that this was the reason why Ning Xuanwu wanted her to stay. I know, this is very embarrassing for you. Ning Xuanwu said earnestly. However, this is related to the future of our Xuanwu sect, and the entire lifeline of Xuanwu sect is in your hands. And having said that, if you can really become his woman, you don't actually feel wrong. After all, he has the lowest cultivation level of martial saint. Don't you always admire the strong? After all, Ning Xuanwu looked at Yao Ling'er inquiringly. Yao Ling'er bit her red lips, thinking about what Ning Xuanwu said. This is not unreasonable, not to mention whether he is Emperor Wu or not, the sage Wu alone is enough to make countless people surrender. If it weren't for these incidents, that young man must be the object of his worship and pursuit by Yao Ling'er. And if she really becomes that young woman, then her demon spirit will definitely rise, and the Xuanwu sect will naturally benefit from it. Master, I have nothing unwilling to do, but can he really like me? Yao Ling'er's face became unconfident. If she wins a man in front of other people, with her natural beauty and her good charm skills, it will naturally be no longer a problem. But a master with the lowest level of cultivation is Martial Saint. What kind of woman does he want? Why would he like him Yaolinger? Ning Xuanwu also frowned. But the matter has come to this point. There is no other way. He can only comfort and say, Linger, believe in your methods for the teacher, and you can do it. Okay. Yaolinger suddenly felt a lot of courage on her body. However, this task is both dangerous and rewarding, and it also aroused the fighting spirit and expectation in her heart. Not long after, Ning Xuanwu and others had rushed back to Xuanwuzong. Yaolinger did not act rashly for the first time, but sneaked into Pingzhong City to hide her cultivation base and live there. In a fortified hall, old ancestor Qingshan's face flashed with anger, and the blue veins on his arms were exposed under the extreme anger. As soon as he left the customs, he heard Luo Lanzu reporting to him that last time at the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce Yu Wuji did something to his husband. Can you bear this? Third elders, you must give me an explanation for this matter. Old ancestor Qingshan exuded a compelling aura, looked at an old man next to him and said in a deep voice, Yu Wuji, I will kill him. No, I will kill him. To delay him. Hearing what Qingshan patriarch said, the third elder's complexion changed drastically, and he knelt directly to the ground. Sect master, calm down. I beg you to give Wujia a chance. I'm willing to let this old man give anything. The third elder said anxiously. To tell the sect master, Wujia is not only my disciple, but also has another level, identity. Old ancestor Qingshan said coldly. So sect master, you already know it. The third elder lowered his head in embarrassment. HMPH, if he wasn't your illegitimate son, I would still talk to you here. Old ancestor Qingshan said coldly, otherwise, Yu Wuji would be a dead dog by now. Thank you sect master for your kindness. The third elder slammed his head on the ground heavily, begging for mercy. I beg sect master, for the sake of serving the sect for the past few years, take Wuji's life. Wuji's punishment, I am willing to bear it for him. After saying that, his face turned ruthless, he waved his energy down, and one arm quickly and neatly landed in front of old ancestor Qingshan. Then, with a pale face, he looked at old ancestor Qingshan and said sincerely, if old ancestor thinks it is not enough, I would like to break another arm. Why are you doing this? The ancestor of Qingshan flashed out, and two chi energy fell on the third elder, helping him seal the bleeding meridian. Please, sect master is kind. The third elder continued to kowtow. Oh, that's all. Old ancestor Qingshan shook his head. Although the third elder had some personal pockets, he had indeed paid a lot for the Qingshan sect over the years, and it was all about it. Moreover, he took this Yu Wuji so seriously, and he also had a relationship with Qingshanmen. Back then, the Qingshan Gate and another sect went to war. The three elders fought for 3 days. They were seriously injured and dying. Although they were rescued, the Yangmen Gate was destroyed, and there was no more power to inherit the lineage. With just such a son, he must try his best to protect him. Thank you sect master for your kindness. The third elder kowtowed to thank him. It's not that I'm kind, but that gentleman didn't take this matter to heart. Qingshan ancestor said solemnly. Otherwise, let alone you, the whole Qingshanmen can't keep him, but I warn you, the people under my command had better discipline me. In addition, since you already know the identity of Mr., but you must not disclose half a word to the outside world. If your disclosure disturbs his cleaning, then you will apologize to me yourself. It's the sovereign. The three elders hurriedly withdrew, and after a series of procedures, Yu Wuji was released. After being released, Yu Wuji didn't care about his injuries, so he sent someone to inquire about Peng Ying's whereabouts. He learned that Peng Ying had been expelled directly from the Qingshan Gate, and his face was extremely gloomy. Not reconciled. I finally got her into the Qingshan Gate. I haven't done it yet. No, I have to get her back. Yi Feng was messy in the wind. What is this about? Wu Yonghong's 4 old men said that there was something wrong, and they left in a hurry, leaving a lot of junk in front of his counter. Say, part of it is what he ordered just now, and the other part is the money from the last time. However, what kind of money are you really giving? Yi Feng is really speechless. These rubbish are really unsightly. A pair of boots, which look similar to rain boots, an umbrella, shabby and worn out, and printed with all kinds of confusing patterns, and there are some unintelligible broken things. That's it. It is estimated that the old man Wu was really incapable of giving money to that rake, and he felt sorry for it, so he used these rubbish things at home to pay off his debts. Fortunately, Yi Feng is no longer short of money. Seriously speaking, these rain boots and umbrella are also useful to him. One day when it rains, put on the rain boots and put on this broken umbrella to go out and order a little wine, it is quite in place. Ow! At this moment, the dog made a groaning sound. Yi Feng glanced at it and ignored it. But Ao Qing still kept wailing. This is his instinct as a monster, especially when he encounters fearful things. At this moment, his eyes were fixed on a small door behind Yi Feng. He has been here for so long, but he has never taken this small door to heart. Usually, he has never entered it, and he rarely sees Yi Feng enter. He thought it was a utility room, but now he does not feel that way. He always felt that there was something hidden inside. Because I could vaguely feel it, there was a deep and terrifying aura from time to time. But what reassured him a little was that Yi Feng was lying on the reclining chair as always, but he didn't care about the aura inside the small door. But he was still curious, what was hidden inside? Baofeng Chamber of Commerce. Yin Shang specially sent someone to invite Luo Lanzu. Ahem, niece, the annual poetry conference will be held in Pingjiang City. All the poetry and literature masters in the city will be invited to the conference. The supreme treasure of Mr. is so popular, I am going to invite Mr. to attend, but because of the status of Mr., I may not pay attention, do you see? Heard. Luo Lanzu fell into contemplation. Then he said, Mr. bowing down has 2 points with Pingjiang City. While setting up a big situation, he is also comprehending the life of mortals. What do you have, as long as it doesn't destroy the overall situation of Mr., and does not affect the original intention of Mr. to understand the life of mortals, there should be no problem. It is easy to solve this without affecting the original intention of Mr. to join the mortal. When contacting with Mr., everything should be from the perspective of a mortal. Yin Shang frowned and said, but, what is the overall situation that Mr. has arranged? Hearing this, Luo Lanzu couldn't help but smiled bitterly and said softly, the overall situation arranged by Mr. is something that you and I can speculate about. In short, everything is cautious and careful, but a poetry conference is also attended by some mortals, since you have the heart. If you invite Mr., then you can directly invite, if Mr. wants to, he will go. Yin Shang nodded and said solemnly, niece, I probably understand what you mean. After negotiating with Luo Lanzu, Yin Shang personally went to the martial arts hall and delivered an invitation to Yi Feng at the same time. Lying on the reclining chair, Yi Feng looked at the invitation in his hand. Either way, if you are idle, why don't you go and have a look? He wanted to see whether it was the cultural knowledge of this other world that was deeper, or whether his 5,000-year-old Yanwang heritage was stronger. A poetry conference. In a courtyard, Yaolinger raised her eyebrows slightly when she saw the news in her hand. Through a series of methods these days, she roughly inquired about the usual living conditions of this mysterious young man. She affirmed, this is a peerless master who stepped into the mundane world and comprehends life. Since it is a poetry conference for mortals, this is a rare opportunity for her. Daughter, my father has something to tell you today. In another luxurious courtyard, Mao Lin looked at his daughter Mao Yuner and said earnestly, daughter, let me ask you, what do you think of this author of Dream of Red Mansions and Supreme Treasure? Father, what do you mean by asking this? Mao Yuner said softly, and while she was speaking, her pretty face was filled with blush. To be honest, because of this supreme treasure, the Chamber of Commerce is likely to lose the first chance in the competition for the first Chamber of Commerce, so for your father, let you have a good relationship with that Yi Feng, even. Speaking of this, Mao Lin blushed with an old face, and he was really speechless. He never imagined that a countryman would actually let him come this far. Father, I know what you mean, I will work hard. Mao Lin's meaning was already obvious, however, Mao Yuner seemed to have no other opinion on Mao Lin's thoughts. The annual poetry conference was finally opened on the banks of the Chunxi River in Pingjiang City. Here, gathered young talents from the entire Pingjiang City. Here, neither strength nor family background are considered high or low, only literary style is considered. Of course, it is said that it is an activity for mortals, but not only mortals can participate, but also cultivators, but even if a cultivator is here, you will still be looked down upon if you do not have good literary qualities. Literati style, that's it. Yi Feng, who received the invitation, also came to the poetry conference. During the conference, many people were playing with their poems and their literary talent, but none of them could arouse Yi Feng's interest. He grew up under the influence of 5,000 years of culture, and he has no idea how much he has understood all kinds of poems that have been passed down through the ages. These poems that seem to have a lot of charm on the surface, but in fact have no meaning, or really attractive. Not his interest. Even the 300 Tang poems he recited were enough to crush these people. But, in the crowded crowd, two eyes were always watching him. One is the demon spirit. The other is Mao Yun'er. Finally, Yao Linger took a deep breath and walked towards Yi Feng. Oops. As soon as she approached Yi Feng, Yao Linger stumbled. However, Yi Feng didn't even look at her, and walked directly past her. Just like that, Yao Linger fell in vain. Girl, are you okay? Girl, how are you? For a time, seeing Yao Linger, such a stunning stunner, fall to the ground, countless literati swarmed over, trying to help Yao Linger up, and conveying gentle concern to Yao Linger. Go away. Yao Linger's face sank. These mortal ants are not worthy of touching her at all. It's just him, why is he turning a blind eye to himself? Could it be that he really couldn't attract his attention? In Yao Linger's eyes, a hint of worry appeared unknowingly. Hello, sir. At this moment, Mao Yun'er walked over to Yi Feng at the right time, blushing pretty, and greeted Yi Feng. It is you. After all, Mao Yun'er and Yi Feng had seen it before, but her face was not very good looking. When he saw Mao Yun'er, he remembered Mao Yun'er's father Mao Lin, and he never forgot the humiliation to him that day, so Yi Feng simply said hello and passed her. For a time, Mao Yun'er was left alone in the spot to grieve. You are a little mortal, can you possibly attract your husband's attention? It's ridiculous. At this moment, Yao Linger walked to Mao Yun'er's side and said coldly. Who are you? Mao Yun'er frowned. She felt an absolute crisis on this woman, especially her body like a water snake gave her a great sense of crisis. Yao Linger sneered. I'm someone you can't match. If you want our errand to point to Mr., you're not worthy. Yao Linger sneered, then watched Yi Feng's back and continued to follow. Mao Yun'er gritted her teeth secretly, although this woman's appearance made her feel absolutely threatened, but thinking about it, she was definitely not bad. Unable to help, Mao Yun'er, who was unwilling to admit defeat, also chased after Yi Feng. Yi Feng, who was walking through the crowd and watching the poems written by literati from other worlds, suddenly heard someone calling him. Turning his head, a complex expression suddenly appeared on his face. It was Peng Ying who called him. I didn't expect to see you here. Peng Ying said coldly. Her posture was not like before, and it seemed that her tone was full of hatred. Yeah, I didn't expect to see you here again. Yi Feng was quite complicated. He is not a heartless man, but neither is the heart of the virgin. Peng Ying left ruthlessly that day. Although Yi Feng was sad, he was also neat and tactful, and he crossed Peng Ying directly in his heart. For this woman, he has long since lost the slightest fluctuation. Yi Feng, I have already inquired clearly. Don't think that you have written a good book. What can you do with Luo Lanzu of Qingshanmen covering you? You must understand that you are a mortal after all. Peng Ying he sneered politely. Although I was expelled from the Qingshan Gate, Brother Wuji has already sent me a letter, and it will not be long before I return to the Qingshan Gate. In my eyes, you are a mortal after all, an ant. Peng Ying sneered coldly. She held a grudge for what happened that day, especially if she was expelled from the Qingshan Gate, it was even more difficult for her to let go. There is nothing to say between us. Yi Feng didn't want to say a word to her, so he walked past her directly. Stop. You made me suffer so much humiliation that day, do you want to leave so easily? Peng Ying said coldly. What do you want? Yi Feng frowned. I don't want to do anything. Peng Ying sneered and said. I just want to tell you, you are always just a trash living at the bottom, and I, a disciple of Qingshanmen, a cultivator, you will always be worthy of not on me. The conversation between Yi Feng and Peng Ying immediately attracted the attention of many people. No matter who it is, gossip is inseparable. An ant like you is only worthy of guarding your broken martial arts hall all your life, living at the bottom, and not even a woman will look at it. Peng Ying laughed heartily. All of this is the insult she received at the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce that day in return. Snapped. However, as soon as her voice fell, a slap landed on her face. It was Mao Yun'er who hit her. Hearing that Peng Ying humiliated the person she admired so much, she couldn't help it and stood up. Frog at the bottom of the well, you can question Mr. S literary talent. Even if you are a cultivator, so what? Mao Yun'er responded mercilessly. Who are you? Being slapped, Peng Ying was hysterical, staring at Mao Yun'er with hatred. Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce, Mao Yun'er. Mao Yun'er said bluntly. What? It's actually Mao Yun'er. I heard that she is not only outstanding in literary talent, but also the jewel in the palm of the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce. Sure enough, it's better to see it than to be famous. It really is everyone's appearance, but why did she come forward to greet this young man? For a while, the young talents who were watching on the side showed a surprised voice, and cast their eyes on Mao Yun'er's body. Obviously, Mao Yun'er, as the jewel of the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce, has long been famous. Mao Yun'er of the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce. Peng Ying made a gloomy voice while holding her face. She couldn't figure out why Mao Yun'er would stand up for Yifeng and in front of her abandoned man. So, she shouted unwillingly. What if you are a member of the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce? What is your relationship with him, and what is your relationship with him? I have nothing to do with him, I'm just a fan of Mr. Supreme Treasure. Mao Yun'er said unwillingly, and turned around and said to Yifeng, Sir, no one dares to speak ill of you with me here. Thank you. Yifeng nodded at him, his face a little complicated. He didn't like the feeling of being watched by others. If he had known it earlier, he would not have come. Fan. Mao Yun'er's words aroused bad memories of Peng Ying. Fans again. That day, Luo Lanzu expelled him from the sect, wasn't it because of the Supreme Treasure? Luo Lanzu is fine, so is Mao Yun'er. Is a book written by a low-level ant so attractive? With a broken book, why does it have such a great influence? Peng Ying couldn't figure it out. Even the best books are written by mortals, and there is a huge gap between them and practitioners. I don't care who you are, it's about me and him, I warn you, get out of the way right away. Under the absolute hatred, Peng Ying coldly made a threatening voice towards Mao Yun'er. At the same time, she pulled out her long sword, revealing the aura of a 9-level warrior on her body. What about the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce? Although she is now expelled from Qingshanmen, but because of Yu Wuji's relationship, she can go back immediately. With the support of Qingshanmen behind her, mortal chambers of commerce are just ants. Therefore, Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce, she is not afraid. Therefore, she did not hesitate to use the aura of cultivation to force Mao Yun'er over. In an instant, Mao Yun'er's face turned pale. Although she is the jewel in the palm of the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce, she is only a mortal person, and she can't bear the slightest coercion in front of the practitioners. The other literary youths who were onlookers also retreated again and again due to the suppression by this momentum. They are ordinary people after all. Snapped. However, at this moment, another slap slapped Peng Ying's face, and then, a woman with the ultimate figure appeared in front of Peng Ying. The appearance of this figure immediately aroused the exclamation of everyone present. Because this one who shot is also a stunning stunner, not only is it not inferior to Mao Yun'er, but the charm revealed by that charming posture makes many people fascinated. More importantly, this one is more ruthless than Mao Yun'er. On Peng Ying's face, a red slap print quickly appeared. For a time, countless people cast Yifeng's eyes at Yifeng. They are all speculating about who Yifeng is, who can actually cause these two women to help. The latter woman is no one else. It's the demon spirit. The burning pain on her face almost made Peng Ying lose her mind. She didn't expect that she would be slapped again. What made her even more puzzled was that the reason for beating her was this man who was abandoned by her, this trash, this ant. With murderous intent in his eyes, staring at Yaolinger, Peng Ying shouted with hatred, "Who are you?" "I'm also a fan of Mr." The corners of Yaolinger's mouth were raised, and she had already made a speech in her heart and said calmly. In the past 2 days in Pingjiang City, she has already found out the details of this mysterious young man. Although she is a Peerless master, she has never exposed mountains or waters. This is obviously the kind of old monster who goes back to the basics to experience life. Because according to her inquiries, this person has experienced the life of mortals to the extreme, such as food, clothing, housing, transportation, 3 meals a day, worldly knowledge and so on. So she understands that even if her cultivation base is exposed in his eyes at a glance, she still has to pretend to be a mortal, so as not to destroy his original intention of experiencing mortal life, and approach him. And the rhetoric of fans happened to be her best rhetoric. A fan again. Peng Ying showed a vicious look, and his angry chest heaved violently. Isn't it just a broken book? Why let a waste that was thrown away by her be glued to women one after another? What made it even more difficult for her to accept was that none of these 2 women were inferior to her, whether in terms of origin, appearance or figure, they were all enough to crush her. Fortunately, these 2 women have no cultivation base at all. Since there is no cultivation base, in Peng Ying's eyes, it is also a waste, just a beautiful vase. What a fan! Since you 2 fools want to meddle in my business, then you will face destruction. Peng Ying shouted coldly. The long sword in his hand was exposed, and the imposing manner of the cultivation base was exposed at the same time. What? Cultivator? It's actually a monk. The onlookers felt Peng Ying's unreserved momentum and were shocked, only to find that Peng Ying in front of him was actually a cultivator. Involuntarily, he cast a respectful look at Peng Ying. Although in this poetry conference, it is not based on the status of strength, the real fact is that practitioners can arouse people's awe in any place. This time, this man and 2 women are miserable. Yeah, I guess Mao Yun'er's 2 women also regretted it in their hearts, and they slapped this female cultivator with a slap. It's a pity for these 2 such beautiful stunners. There was a lot of discussion, and many people even looked at Yifeng and Yao Linger with pity. The people's awe-inspiring actions and the words of discussion caused Peng Ying's chin to rise slightly, with a strong pride on his face. She enjoyed the awe. I also enjoy the feeling of being feared. Now, it's her turn to slowly humiliate the 3, so let's start with these 2 fools. Thinking of this, she suddenly cast her gaze on Mao Yun'er and pressed her with momentum. Mao Yun'er trembled in fright. She was a weak woman who had experienced the coercion of practitioners, her complexion suddenly changed, and her pretty face became bloodless. Why, didn't you hit me hard just now? Peng Ying said coldly, why not now? Mao Yun'er's face was pale, and she didn't dare to say a word. I'll ask you to kneel now. Peng Ying threatened again. Mao Yun'er's face changed greatly, and she shook her head busily. Such humiliation was unacceptable to her. Don't kneel. Peng Ying's face turned cold, and as soon as the long sword in her hand came out, she instantly pushed towards Mao Yun'er. What? When the long sword came, Mao Yun'er let out a coquettish cry, and before the sword arrived, the whole person collapsed to the ground in fright. Seeing this, Peng Ying showed a disdainful smile. An ant is an ant, my sword hasn't fallen on you yet, why is it like this? Mao Yun'er's pretty body trembled, but she still didn't dare to say a word, and was full of fear for Peng Ying. Mao Yun'er's pitiful gaze made Peng Ying enjoy unprecedented speed. This is the status a cultivator should have, not something mortals can compare to. Fierce. She cast her icy gaze on Yao Linger again, and at the same time, the pressure on her body turned her gun and went straight to Yao Linger. This woman, that slap is heavier than Mao Yun'er. She must be severely humiliated. However, in the face of Peng Ying's coercion, Yao Linger did not fluctuate, and even showed a mocking look. Why are you all right? Peng Ying's face changed, and she asked incredulously. For some reason, Yao Linger's blandness suddenly made her feel very uncertain. Could it be that there was something wrong with her cultivation? However, no, she herself can strongly feel her terrifying cultivation realm. Why should I be in trouble? Yao Linger raised the corner of her mouth and smiled. Then why aren't you afraid of me? Peng Yinglu said in a panic. I am a cultivator, why aren't you a mortal afraid of me? Aren't you afraid that I will kill you? What about cultivators? Yao Linger said disdainfully. So, you came to kill me? Read Guguo's provocation. This made Peng Ying's face full of gloom. Yao Linger's boldness made her more and more clueless, but the more so, the stronger her hatred for Yao Linger. Because this made her cultivator's authority questioned. Go to hell. Under the anger, Peng Ying raised the long sword in his hand and pointed straight at Yao Linger without any fancy. This sudden scene made the expressions of the onlookers change greatly, and their hearts were already silent for Yao Linger. Ding! However, What people didn't expect was that with the trembling of the long sword in Peng Ying's hand came out of his hand, and then fell into the river. What? The crowd suddenly showed disbelief. Because they didn't see what happened at all, Peng Ying's longsword had already fallen into the river. Peng Ying's face was as if she had seen a ghost, and she looked at Yao Ling'er in fear. Others don't know, but as the party she is very clear. Yao Ling'er just flicked her long sword with her finger, and the power transmitted made her unable to hold the long sword and let go. Even, that power still makes her arm go numb. You. Looking at Yao Ling'er, Peng Ying's face turned pale, and she stepped back subconsciously. What am I? Yao Ling'er narrowed her eyes, pressed her feet towards Peng Ying step by step, and said in a low voice, "You are a little 9th-level warrior, where did you get the courage to make you so mad?" At the same time as the voice fell, Yao Ling'er silently exuded a coercion, shrouding Peng Ying. Peng Ying retreated in fear, especially when she felt this pressure. Fear spread rapidly in her heart, the arrogance just now disappeared, only a strong fear remained. She also couldn't understand why Yao Ling'er, a dignified cultivator, would have such respect for Yifeng, an ant, and even become his fan, a gentleman. Do you think you are a 9th-level martial artist? Do you deserve to be called a cultivator? At this time, Yao Ling'er asked unforgivingly, even more so. Are you worthy? Peng Ying's face was ugly, and she kept silent. I asked you something, Yao Ling'er asked. When the voice fell, a slap slapped Peng Ying's face. You, what are you? The voice fell, and another slap slapped Peng Ying's face, and then continued to ask, tell me, with such a little cultivation, are you worthy of being called a cultivator? Do not. Peng Ying hesitated, his expression full of unwillingness. Why no? Yao Ling'er was still pressing, and at the same time, she slapped her past. Immediately, Peng Ying's face was flushed red from the beating, as red and swollen as a pig, and tears of grievance fell from her eyes. In such a scene, everyone including Yifeng was stunned. This woman is too hot, right? Seeing Yao Ling'er about to slap her again, Peng Ying said unwillingly with tears in her eyes, no, I'm not worthy. Hey, then go away. Yao Ling'er sneered disdainfully, and slapped her again. What? With a groan, Peng Ying's body rolled in the air, and then fell heavily into the river. Without looking at Peng Ying again, Yao Ling'er turned to look at Yifeng. The expression on her face has changed a lot. See you, sir, she said softly, and at the same time gave Yifeng a slight salute. Thank you, girl, for your help. Yifeng replied softly. Sir, you're welcome, Yao Ling'er said softly. I'm afraid you don't know who I am yet. I am. However, when she was halfway through, Yifeng smiled and interrupted. Don't be so troublesome, we've met before. Have you seen it before? Hearing this, Yao Ling'er's body trembled. He was suddenly stunned in place, unable to say a word for a while. Could it be that he already knew his identity? His last Yirong had already been seen through by him. Involuntarily, Yao Ling'er broke out in a cold sweat. Thinking of this, she quickly explained. Sir, I'm really sorry, I was because of. Needless to say, it's no big deal. Yifeng waved his hand and said with a smile, he did see Yao Ling'er just now. After all, Yao Ling'er pretended to fall in front of him, he didn't miss it. In the eyes, the reason why I didn't help her was also because I didn't know her. After all, a beautiful woman I didn't know suddenly did this, there must be a monster. It's just that now it seems that I blame her in the wrong, it turns out to be my fan. As a fan, it's not an exaggeration to adore his idol and make a little woman's tune to attract his attention, so seeing her anxious and embarrassed appearance, Yifeng interrupted her at the right time. After all, women are more shy, and it is the best policy to see through and not to say. It's just, my face and talent. Hearing what Yifeng said, Yao Ling'er subconsciously wiped the sweat from her forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. In my heart, I couldn't help but smile. It turned out that people already knew his identity. It just makes her feel fortunate that he doesn't seem to care about his own identity. It's really hard to guess the city government of such a person. However, if you think about it, you can find the reason. In his eyes, Xuanwuzong is just a small faction, and he really doesn't care about it. It's just that you can see through your identity, but don't see through your purpose. Thinking of this, Yao Ling'er is both shy and nervous. And Miss Yuner, thank you too. Yifeng helped Mao Yuner beside him and said softly. Thank you, sir. Feeling the strength of Yi Feng's arm, Mao Yuner lowered her head and blushed. It's nothing, it should be me thanking you. By the way, in order to express my gratitude, let me invite you two to dinner tonight. Yi Feng said softly. Hearing this, the faces of the two women suddenly brightened, and they quickly agreed. This scene is simply envious of others, and there are eyes of envy, jealousy and hatred. When this happened, Yi Feng had no interest in this poetry conference. He glanced at Peng Ying, who was still in the river, with a complicated look. Yi Feng and the two women temporarily left. After Yi Feng and others left, a figure in a white robe swept over and fell into the crowd. Wow, another monk. When everyone saw this, they avoided one after another, but they didn't expect that another cultivator came. The person who came was Yu Wuji, who had just come down the mountain. He finally got out of the Qingshanmen prison, and he couldn't wait to invite Peng Ying to meet here. Yinger, where are you, Yinger? Yu Wuji shouted loudly. Brother Wuji, I. At this time, Peng Ying, who had just come out of the river, had no time to clean up when she met Yu Wuji head on. What's wrong with you? Yu Wuji's face sank and he asked quickly. Me. Saying that, Peng Ying's tears fell. Also, why are you holding your face? Yu Wuji frowned again and asked. Brother Wuji, I was bullied. Peng Ying said pitifully, my face is hurt. What? Who dares to be so bold? Yinger, don't be afraid, I will take revenge for you, let me see how your face hurts first. Yu Wuji came to Peng Ying in a gentle voice, worried said. But, I'm ugly now, and it will take a long time to recover. Brother Wuji, you won't dislike me, will you? Peng Ying asked nervously with a hesitant face. Why, Yinger, how can I despise you? Let me see. Yu Wuji said with concern. All right. After squeezing for a long time, Peng Ying put down her palm, revealing her swollen face. Moment. Yu Wuji's eyeballs almost burst out. I wipe, what the hell are you? While speaking, he landed on Peng Ying, and Peng Ying flew out, hitting the river heavily, causing a splash of water. After kicking Peng Ying into the air, Yu Wuji ran away. He wanted to cry without tears. So ugly, what the hell is this? Ah, help, help. However, no one heard Peng Ying's sound of life-saving. She just happened to be sucked into a vortex in the water. Just when someone noticed it, Peng Ying was completely sucked into the vortex and disappeared. After returning from the Chunxi River, Yi Feng had already returned to the martial arts hall. As soon as he walked into the backyard, he found the dog lying on the ground and trembling. And his fearful gaze just happened to be facing the small door behind Yi Feng's reclining chair. Wonkai, what are you doing recently? Yi Feng rubbed his head and comforted. Ow, ooh, Ao Qing shouted at the school gate. You wouldn't be. Yi Feng stared at the dog. This situation is very similar to the estrus period of his previous life when he was in estrus, is it that? Thinking of this, Yi Feng looks more and more like him. Okay, there is time another day, I will help you solve this problem, but for the time being, I have to wrong you first. After comforting Ao Qing, Yi Feng got up and stretched, feeling rather bored. After all, it was still early before dinner time. Apprentice, I went to Yihang Courtyard to fight the landlords with those girls. Help me watch the martial arts hall. Yi Feng said softly, and also thought of the young ladies in Yihang Courtyard. It's been a long time since they had fought with the landlord. In the afternoon, they must have no business, so it's good to find them just to pass the time. Yes, master. Zhang Qing nodded obediently, and couldn't help but ask, by the way, master, what is Dudiju doing? Ah, Yi Feng rubbed his head and smiled, you don't understand it. Master, I think I understand, because I often pass by there when I help you drink, and I often see those young ladies and those. Having said this, Zhang Qing became hesitant to speak, and was nervous for a long time before he finally stopped. He hesitated and said, so master, you are going to Yihang Courtyard to fight the landlord, can you take me with you? After speaking, his face was embarrassed, and his whole face flushed red. However, full of expectations, he licked his lips subconsciously and looked at Yi Feng with his eyes. What do you know? Yi Feng smiled helplessly. This deck of cards is the only one in his hand in the whole world, and he made it himself. He also taught the girls in Yihang Courtyard. Zhang Qing had never seen it, so how could he understand it? Master, I really understand. Zhang Qingquek wanted to try. You really don't understand. At this moment, you should still practice your boxing well. I'll teach you about fighting landlords later. Yi Feng patted him on the shoulder and comforted him softly, then walked leisurely out. But I'm not too young now. Zhang Qing scratched his head in confusion, but the master didn't want him to go, so he could only keep the excitement secretly in his heart. Ow, ooh. In the yard, Ao Qing still made a vibrato towards the small door. I can't take it anymore. Ao Qing took a stride and went to the front hall. Now he would rather face the 18 magic weapons than face the fear that came out of the small door. The ghost knows what his master is hiding inside. Can't afford to offend. I can hide. On the other hand, in the face of Yi Feng's dinner invitation, both Mao Yuner and Yao Linger took it very seriously. Therefore, Yao Linger immediately used the jade slip to send a letter to Ning Xuanwu. Linger, I believe in you. You have to remember that tonight is a rare opportunity. Even if you do anything you can, you must take him down tonight. The future of Xuanwu sect is handed over to you. Yujian Lining Xuanwu's solemn message made Yao Linger feel heavy, and she solemnly nodded. Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. Hearing Mao Yuner's report, Mao Lin frowned and thought deeply. Finally, after hesitating for a long time, he took out a jade bottle and placed it in front of Mao Yuner with a snap. Yuner, I hope you don't blame me. Having said this, Mao Lin sighed deeply. In the past month, the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce has completely crushed his Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce because of the supreme treasure, so he was under the pressure of the entire Chamber of Commerce, making him breathless. Right now, he can only do whatever he can. Thinking of this, he felt extremely regretful for what happened at the beginning, and was blinded for a while, and he fell into such a situation, and even had to use his girl. So what is father? Mao Yuner looked at the white jade bottle and bit her red lips. Spring flowers are scattered, Mao Lin said with an ugly face. Hearing this, Mao Yuner's pretty body trembled slightly, although her pretty face was full of complexity and unwillingness, but when she remembered that Mr. The front hall of the martial arts hall. Zhang Qing punched over and over again. Now that he has studied with Yi Feng for so long, he has also learned a lot, and the punches are also gusty. On the other side, Ao Qing was lying on the ground, watching boredly. Gee, this little boy's punch was far worse than his master's. However, for the sake of feeding me every day, forget it, I won't complain about you. At this moment, a figure came out of the martial arts hall. It was the specially dressed Yao Linger, with beautiful facial features, enchanting figure, and with a burst of fragrance behind her, the eyes of the people watching the street exploded. But Yao Linger didn't even look at these people, her eyes were completely in the martial arts hall in front of her. She took a deep breath, her expression full of tension. Because she looked at the martial arts hall so closely, of course, she came because she wanted to have a good relationship with Yi Feng in advance. After all, there is also a covetous Mao Yuner. Although she didn't put Mao Yuner in her eyes in terms of strength, and even she was confident in her beauty, she still had no idea in her heart. After all, she didn't know which Yi Feng was better. So she came early, also wanting to take the lead. When she finally came to the door, she looked at the gentian stone under her feet and the uncollected rags hanging on the side. She looked complicated, but she didn't dare to act rashly, and softly shouted, "Is there anyone?" Zhang Qing, who was boxing in the hall, heard the words and walked out quickly and said in a proper manner, "Who are you looking for?" "Hello, little brother, I'm looking for Mr. Yi," Yao Linger said with a lot of style. "Sorry, master is not here, come back another day," Zhang Qing said apologetically. "Not here," Yao Linger raised her brows, bit her red lips tightly, and then asked, "Then can you tell me where your master is going?" This, Zhang Qing's face was a little embarrassed. "Just tell me, okay." Yao Linger blinked at Zhang Qing, and asked in a dignified manner, her voice even more provocative. Zhang Qing's heart trembled, facing Yao Linger's stunning beauty, he had no resistance at all, blushed and stammered for a long time, and then he faltered and said, "Master went to Yihang Court to find Miss Sister to fight the landlord." Quote. Yihang Courtyard. Yao Linger's beautiful eyes flashed, as if she had heard some incredible news, and she quickly asked, "Can you tell me, little brother, what exactly is Do Dizu?" It's. Zhang Qing was embarrassed and said embarrassedly, "It's about men and women." Oh, Yao Linger nodded deeply, looked at Zhang Qing with a smile, and said, "Little brother can't tell that you understand it quite well." Thank you today, and my sister will introduce you to one another day. Suddenly, Zhang Qing blushed, but said in his mouth, this, I will talk about this later, you should go back first, I still need to practice boxing. Seeing Zhang Qing's appearance, Yao Ling'er blinked. Sure enough, if there is a teacher, there will be an apprentice. Okay, I won't bother you anymore, you'd better go back to practice martial arts first, I'll go first. Yao Ling'er said softly. Zhang Qing nodded and returned to the martial arts hall. Seeing Zhang Qing walking back to the martial arts hall, Yao Ling'er's red lips raised slightly. Although she didn't see Yi Feng, now she has received important information. She was very worried, what would happen if a person like Yi Feng was not close to women? After all, at his level, it is very likely that he will forget about it, but now that he has received the news, it seems that this gentleman is gentle on the surface, but he is not a serious person behind the scenes. In this case, it is much simpler for her to achieve her goal. She left the martial arts hall full of joy, but after just 2 steps, she paused and looked at the swift cloak hanging beside her. After hesitating for a long time, she gritted her teeth and took the swift cloak into her hands. Ow! At the same time, Ao Qing, who was lying in the martial arts hall, called out. Seeing this, Zhang Qing frowned, picked up the long knife Yi Feng gave him from the side, and rushed out. And the moment he walked out, he happened to see the scene of Yao Ling'er holding the sheep. How dare you steal something? Zhang Qing's face was filled with anger, and she shouted, looking at how beautiful you are, I didn't expect you to be such a person. Yao Ling'er's face changed slightly, and she didn't expect to be seen by Zhang Qing, but she didn't panic, she changed into a charming look and said, little brother, how about this piece of cloth for me, elder sister? I agreed to introduce you to Miss. I told you to put down the rag. Zhang Qing shouted righteously. Although it's just a rag, but I see you clearly, I don't need you to introduce Miss. Little brother, are you boring like this? Yao Ling'er continued with a smile. However, the current Zhang Qing didn't eat her at all. As soon as the long knife in his hand came out, his little body turned into an arc and charged towards Yao Ling'er. Humph, so a little 3-legged cat kung fu also matches me. Yao Ling'er smiled disdainfully, but in the next instant, an absolute coercion fell on top of her head. What? This knife is such a powerful coercion. Is it royal? Do not. Shocking stones and swift cloaks are imperial treasures, but they are far inferior to this aura. Could it be a product? Even a holy product? Yao Ling'er didn't dare to imagine it, she only knew that the sword in front of her, which seemed to have no power at all, had an unparalleled pressure that made her crawl and kneel. Crack! This one is getting closer and closer. Under the powerful pressure, the slate under Yao Ling'er's feet has been broken, but Zhang Qing still has no plans to stop. Steal stuff from the martial arts hall. Even if it is a rag, he will not show mercy. Because here is his warmest home, without the master's consent, no one can destroy the martial arts hall, and no one can take away half of the martial arts hall. The fear in her heart became stronger and stronger, and Yao Ling'er's face became more and more pale, and finally, under the threat of her life, she knelt to the ground with a slam of her legs. I don't dare anymore. She hurriedly screamed in fear. Laugh. The long knife stopped half an inch above Yao Ling'er's head, but it still caused Yao Ling'er to break out in a cold sweat. It was the first time in her life that she was so close to death. The humiliation of kneeling down made Yao Ling'er extremely unwilling, but there was a wry smile and regret on her face. Yes, since this boy is that person's disciple, he shouldn't take it lightly from the beginning. Thinking of this, he hurriedly handed out his hands and presented the swift cloak. I warn you, if you dare to steal anything from my martial arts hall again, I won't be merciful next time. Zhang Qing took the rag and glared at Yao Ling'er before turning around and leaving. Before leaving, Ao Qing gave Yao Ling'er a disdainful glance. Snort, even a small martial arts spirit dares to be wild. Although this kid is stupid, he is still the master's disciple, so how could a martial spirit be able to provoke him? It just so happened that Ao Qing's disdainful gaze was caught by Yao Ling'er, and he felt even more humiliated. Zhang Qing is fine, after all, he is that one's disciple. But she was actually despised by a dog, which made her unbearable, so after Zhang Qing had turned around, she glared at the dog fiercely. Yo, the sample is still not satisfied. Ao Qing suddenly became angry. I am also the owner's pet now. The sun-shaped mark on my forehead lit up slightly in anger, and a beam of light suddenly shone out. What? Yaolinger's complexion changed greatly, her cultivation base revealed, and she used all her cultivation bases to resist this blow. But the beam of light was completely unstoppable, and it fell on her chest. PFF'd. Yaolinger flew out and smashed on the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood, but her eyes flashed with incredible incomprehension. Her demon spirit was actually beaten up by a dog again. How is it possible? How is it possible? Wrong. Something is wrong with this dog. It seems to be the legendary sky-devouring demon wolf. Call. She sucked in a sharp breath. This martial arts hall is so incomprehensible, that person who does not say it himself, let alone the 4 major martial sects of that day, and now there is a disciple holding a sacred artifact, and a sky-devouring demon wolf who is regarded as a dog. She was full of regrets, and she knew that she should not want to go with the swift cloak impulsive. It's really a mistake that has turned into an eternal hatred. Now it seems that she can only carry out the plan to the end tonight, and only if she succeeds. I am afraid that these things can be resolved. The dinner has finally begun. Yi Feng ordered the meal first as agreed, and now that he is rich, the place he chooses is naturally not greeted, and it is one of the best restaurants in Pingjiang City. There is a small bridge and flowing water here, and there are fireworks to watch at night. Thinking of the help the 2 women have helped him today, it is not an exaggeration to bring them to such a place to thank him. After all, girls like this kind of tone. After setting the location, Yi Feng sat on the bench in the restaurant's front hall and waited for the 2 women. At this time, a young man with a paper fan came over. Seeing that he looked like a gentleman, he smiled and said, "Brother, can you lean to the side?" Yi Feng nodded and moved to the side. After the young man sat down, he smiled and said, "Hello, brother, thank you. By the way, you came here to eat, right?" "Right." It can be seen that this is a familiar buddy. Yi Feng did not hold it, so he nodded with a smile. Looking at the appearance of Shangtai, is it waiting for the girl? The young man said with a smile. Ah, Yi Feng rubbed his nose and nodded. Fate. The young man cupped his hands and said quietly, "I'll go to Wang Zan again. In fact, I'm also waiting for the girl." Speaking of this, he continued talking and said, "Don't you know, Shangtai, it's not easy for me to invite this girl to come here for a meal. I pursued her for 3 months before agreeing to me, but I remembered that her beauty is worth it." As soon as Wang Zan's voice fell, a beautiful woman wearing a long skirt walked in. "Xiao Yu." Seeing this, Wang Zan hurriedly shouted, and at the same time, pulling Yi Feng and introducing softly, "Brother, this is the girl I told you, Rui Xiao Yu." "Hello, Miss Rui." Yi Feng nodded with a smile. "Hello." Rui Xiao Yu also nodded to Yi Feng and said hello. "Dude, would you like to have some food together?" Wang Zan said with a smile, and at the same time leaned closer to Yi Feng and lowered his voice. "How about it, buddy, didn't you brag?" When speaking, Wang Zan's eyes were full of pride. "I do have vision, but I have to wait for someone." Yi Feng admired that this Rui Xiaoyu was indeed very beautiful, with a ladylike temperament. "Okay, buddy, keep sitting, I'll go first." Wang Zan gave Yi Feng a smug look. Just as he was about to take Rui Xiaoyu away, there was a commotion at the door of the restaurant. Subsequently, a woman in a long dress with a good figure who looked like a jewel in her palm walked in. Mao Yunner. Immediately after, Yao Linger walked in with her hot body and her red lips slightly raised. Demon spirit. The appearance of the 2 women attracted the attention of countless people. A woman is slim and graceful. A woman with a variety of styles, attracting attention. And Wang Zan, who was leaving, also widened his eyes, and even Rui Xiaoyu was ignored by him for a while. Chapter 71. Just watch it. Wang Zan stopped his steps, looked at the 2 girls with coveted eyes, pushed Yi Feng with his elbow, and said quietly, "Dude, these 2 are the real best. If there is one, I will die. Also worth it." Hearing this, Yi Feng immediately rolled his eyes at Wang Zan. Is this dude the Sea King? Obviously there is a good one next to him, and he is still thinking about others, but fortunately his Rui Xiaoyu didn't hear it. "Oh, but we can only think about this kind of beauty, and we don't know who is so lucky to have dinner with them." Although Wang Zan was thinking about it in his heart, he also knew himself and patted Yi Feng on the shoulder in disappointment. However, as soon as his voice fell, the 2 women walked straight towards this side. Gentlemen, gentlemen, the two women made voices at the same time. A gentle, one full of flavor. This scene made the hearts of everyone who watched it tickled. A sour smell permeated the entire restaurant. Of course, the most incredible thing was Wang Zan next to him. His whole mouth was open, enough to put an egg in his mouth, and he turned his shocking eyes to Yifeng next to him. Hiss. Dude, I really didn't see it, you cow. Wang Zan looked at Yifeng meaningfully and gave a thumbs up. That look was really admirable. Yifeng glanced at him with a smile, and then said to the two women, let's go eat first. After bidding farewell to Wang Zan, Yifeng came to the reserved table under the envious gaze of everyone, and in order to express his gratitude, this was the best place. Stand out. Soon, plates of delicious food were served. Sir, eat this. Mao Yuner took a piece of meat and gave it to Yifeng. Seeing this, Yao Linger's face changed, and she also took a bite of the dish into Yifeng's bowl, and said unwillingly, Sir, eat me. Mao Yuner frowned, leaned her pretty body against Yifeng, and actually took a bite of the vegetable and fed it to Yifeng herself. No need for that. Yifeng refused with embarrassment on his face, but the kindness was difficult, so he had to open his mouth. Yao Linger's face was frosty and she gave Mao Yuner a vicious look, but in front of Yifeng, she didn't dare to act rashly, and she also secretly competed. There is no face to see Ning Xuanwu. Sir, you're tired from walking just now. I'll rub your shoulders for you. After speaking, he put down his chopsticks, propped up his charming body and came behind Yifeng, and put his jade hand on Yifeng's shoulder and gently rubbed it. Grass. Dry. Eat Nima. I was fed dog food even after I had a meal. Seeing this scene, countless male diners clapped their chopsticks and left the restaurant angrily. On the other hand, Wang Zan also looked straight. Talent. In front of this buddy, he, Wang Zan, is nothing, and looking at Rui Xiaoyu next to him, it doesn't feel good at all. Have you had enough? The two women were secretly fighting each other. Yifeng was not a fool, how could he not see it? He was able to endure for a while at first, but the two women became more and more excessive, which made his voice a little sullen. Of course, it's not his style, but the attitude shown by the two women fighting for the front is too deliberate, which makes Yifeng uncomfortable. Yifeng's words immediately startled the two women. At the same time, he sat back in his seat obediently, not daring to say another word. You don't mind, I didn't mean to talk about you. Seeing the two girls doing this, Yifeng comforted again and continued to eat. Although there is no more action in the action, the eyes of the two women have been arguing. After all, the two have not yet decided a winner or loser. Unable to stand, Yao Linger's eyes narrowed slightly and her red lips raised. In this case, she can't control so much. Then he shouted directly, Sir. Yifeng raised his head and looked at her. Tonight, shall we fight the landlord together? Yao Linger moved her beautiful eyes lightly, looked at Yifeng with awe and asked, and said this, even her Yao Linger's face couldn't help but blushed. Fighting the landlord. Yifeng looked at Yao Linger in surprise, and asked in surprise, have you ever fought a landlord? After all, there are no landlords in this other world, and the few who can fight landlords are also taught by him. No, I've definitely never fought a landlord before. Even if I fight a landlord, it's definitely the first time. Yao Linger's pretty face flushed red as she lowered her head. Oh, Yifeng nodded, probably because Yao Linger had heard others talk about fighting the landlord, but he didn't take it to heart, so he said, then if you want to fight the landlord, I'll fight with you, just tell me the time. Hearing this, Yao Linger's beautiful eyes lit up. Never thought that Yifeng would agree so readily, and he couldn't help but feel a little proud of his beauty. However, it's not good to fight the landlord during the day, right? Yao Linger said in a charming manner. If you want to fight, it's also Linger who fights with her husband all night, right? After Yifeng agreed, her courage increased a lot. Under the table, a jade foot was gently raised and rubbed against Yifeng's thigh intentionally or unintentionally. Yifeng's face was black. I still want to play all night. However, it is understandable. When Do Dizu was all the rage in the previous life, he also fought all night, lost tens of millions of happy beans, and did not sleep for 2 days and 2 nights. Okay, you can stay all night if you say it. Yifeng said indifferently. Yes sir, then Linger will definitely be happy with her tonight. Yao Ling'er's red lips wriggled gently, and she was extremely pleasantly surprised. She didn't expect this task to be completed so easily. But, at this time, Yi Feng took a bite of the dish and swallowed it, then put down his chopsticks and said, I really want to fight the landlord, what's the point of the two of us? It must be three of us, so Miss Yuner should come too. Yao Ling'er, who was so proud of her goal, suddenly opened her red lips. Sir, do you want 3 people to fight the landlord? She looked at Yi Feng in surprise. That's for sure, since it's a landlord, at least 3 people are needed. Yi Feng said with a smile. Of course, if there are enough people, 4 people can do it. Ah, it turns out that Mr. is good. Li, awesome. Yao Ling'er's face was ugly, and she said with a slight shock. What's so great about this? It's a routine operation. Yi Feng said nonchalantly. Hearing this, Yao Ling'er's mouth twitched, and she felt a little poor. Mao Yuner actually got the opportunity to fight the landlord together because of this, but Yi Feng had asked for it, how could she dare to say anything? Okay, let's eat first, I'll open a room, and by the way, I'll send a junior to my house to pick up the props that the landlord needs. Yi Feng took the lead in putting down his chopsticks and got up and said, and walked towards the counter. Yi Feng's words couldn't help but make Yao Ling'er choked. Actually, do you still need props? This old monster is an old monster, and the taste is unique. For a time, she had a creepy feeling, and suddenly found that Mao Yuner was also fighting the landlord together, which was a good thing for her. She couldn't help but looked at Mao Yuner and said coldly, this is the end of the matter, let's get straight to the point. You have a plan to approach Mr. Mao Yuner's face changed slightly, but she remained silent. It doesn't matter if you don't say it, but I don't care what your intentions are, since the husband has already said so, tonight you will accompany me to fight against the landlord. Yao Ling'er stared at Mao Yuner with burning eyes, word by word, do you understand? He said. Hearing this, Mao Yuner also instantly understood the meaning of the words. As the pearl of the Chamber of Commerce, it looks weak on the outside, but it is not necessarily a real silly white lotus. If my guess is right, that's what it means to fight the landlord. Mao Yuner also said tit for tat. So, now we are temporarily putting aside our prejudices and doing our own thing. You can understand that, Yao Ling'er said, raising her red lips at the same time. The two women rarely stand on the same front. Taking Yi Feng away to the extreme, Yao Ling'er waved her hand, and a stream of light disappeared. And Mao Yuner took the opportunity to leave, and also placed a note in the flower pot. After a while, a man passed the flower pot and picked up the note, consciously or unintentionally, and then disappeared quietly. Ha ha ha, Qingshan, you old man, I don't care what conspiracy method you used to win the trust of that person, but after tonight, my Xuanwu sect is no longer afraid. In the hall of Xuanwuzong, Ning Xuanwu looked at the jade slip in his hand, and there was a happy laugh from his mouth. Sect Master, why are you so excited? Next, the elders asked. Ling'er was fortunately not humiliated at the foot of the mountain, and she has already pinpointed the one at the foot of the mountain. Ning Xuanwu clenched his fist and said with a smile on his face, after tonight, Ling'er is the woman who is the one. With this level of identity, with Ling'er's means, the previous friction can be quickly resolved, and it will bring unexpected benefits to my Xuanwu sect. Real, that's great. For a time, the people of Xuanwuzong also flooded with joy, showing excitement. The rise of Xuanwuzong, right in front of you. It is good. In the conference hall of the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce, Mao Lin, who had a gloomy face, suddenly stood up with a slap on the thigh after receiving the message from his subordinates. President, what makes you so excited? That's right, if there's something really exciting, let's deal with the Chamber of Commerce first. That's right, the influence it brings to the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce is getting bigger and bigger. If you can't think of a way, we have to discuss and replace your chairman. Many high-level officials of the Chamber of Commerce made gloomy voices one after another, and they, who mainly focused on interests, were now dissatisfied with Mao Lin and his. Humph, replace me, I see who of you dares to replace me, isn't it just a little Yi Feng, what's so dignified? In the first part, Mao Lin waved the note in his hand vigorously, and said solemnly, this is the end, I will not hide it from you. The little girl and that Yi Feng will soon have a private life, and he will have to see me in the future. Respectfully call him father-in-law. What, is this true? Hearing this, the senior members of the Chamber of Commerce all showed their shocked eyes. HMPH, can I still lie about my daughter's life events? Mao Lin snorted, his eyes full of pride. It turns out, that's great. Yes, President, we said the wrong thing just now. Since he has become your son-in-law, he will no longer be able to serve my Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce in the future. That's right, President, you are calm enough. If you don't tell us about such a good thing sooner, we will worry about it for so long in vain. Listening to the flattery of this group of people, Mao Lin stood with his hands behind his back, and raised his chin subconsciously, full of usefulness. After the dinner, Yi Feng took the two girls directly to the restaurant's Tianzihao room. Hiss, cow batch. Outside, Wang Zan, who had been keeping an eye on Yi Feng, took a deep breath and his eyes were full of envy. After entering the room, the faces of the two women showed a pretty red color. Thinking that the three of them would be landowners soon, they became a little uneasy, but there were some expectations. Bring it on. Yi Feng sat on the table and said with a smile. Sir, just, right on the table. Mao Yun'er asked with red lips slightly open, and while asking the question, she glanced at Yaolinger, whose face was also full of shyness. It's on the table. But since Yi Feng ordered them like this, they naturally did not dare to have any opinion, and they all leaned towards Yi Feng's table. The blush on their faces became more and more intense, and even their necks became a little hot. After all, whether it's Yaolinger or Mao Yun'er, it's the first time to fight the landlord, let alone three people fighting the landlord on the table. It's embarrassing to think about it. Let's start. Finally, Yi Feng took the playing cards out of his arms and slapped them on the table. Sir, is this? The two women cast suspicious glances. Fight the landlord. Is this the Do Dizu? If not, the two girls trembled. Suddenly, he froze in place, with a suspicious expression on his face. After reacting, they couldn't help themselves in embarrassment, and the corners of their mouths twitched. Only then did they understand that the two of them had always misunderstood the meaning of fighting the landlord. How to do? Mao Yun'er blinked at Yaolinger. After all, both of them are now both prosperous and damaged. First accompany Mr. Fight, the landlord. Yaolinger's heart was full of complexity. She said with clenched teeth, other things can only find another chance. After all, three people are in a room, there will always be a chance. Yi Feng quickly taught the two women the rules of fighting landlords. Is there any problem? Yi Feng asked. No problem. The two women had complicated hearts, but they could only nod their heads. However, just fighting like this, it's useless without a bet. Yi Feng touched his chin and said, in this way, each of us will take out one thing as a bet, and we will see the final score in the end, win. Of course, a small bet on happiness and a big bet hurts one's health. With that said, Yi Feng slapped a dagger on the table, so the bet had better be worth it, and it shouldn't be too expensive. I'll take my dagger, it's my favorite. However, when Yi Feng's dagger hit the table, Yaolinger's eyes almost went straight. This is the one, so-called a bit of value, but not too expensive. Yaolinger took a deep breath. She couldn't recognize the specific quality of this dagger, but she knew that it was at least a holy product. This instantly made her salivate. However, when she thought that there was nothing in her body that could be compared to this level, she was in trouble. After hesitating for a long time, she took out the double sword that Ning Xuanwu gave her from the storage ring, which was the same level as the Zhenshan stone. Of course, this was the most precious thing she could only come up with, and it was even the most precious thing in the current Xuanwu sect. Sir, can I use this as a bet? Yaolinger asked nervously, fearing that Yi Feng would look down on these knives and was unwilling. Almost, Yi Feng said with a smile. After all, these two knives look very delicate, and they do meet the conditions he said are not too bad and not too expensive. Yi Feng's agreement made Yaolinger heave a sigh of relief. As soon as she thought that she could use her double knives to win Yi Feng's dagger that was no less than holy, her blood began to boil. On the other hand, Mao Yun'er looked at Yi Feng's dagger and Yaolinger's double sword, and became tangled. As the pearl of the Chamber of Commerce, her eyesight was not comparable to ordinary people since she was a child. It can be seen that the things of the two are not ordinary things. If she takes out the things that are too inferior, it will definitely not work, but the things that are almost the same, he only has. Gritting her teeth, she took out a patterned copper sheet in her arms, put it on the table, and asked softly, I can use this, okay? Yi Feng took a look and nodded. Naturally there was no problem. But Yao Linger's eyes jumped, and she looked at Mao Yuner somewhat unexpectedly. This piece of copper seems to be one of the keys to a secret realm, and she didn't expect Mao Yuner to be able to take out such a thing. But think about it, as a large chamber of commerce, there are some good things that can be forgiven. After all, their practitioners will often go to the mortal chamber of commerce to shop for treasures. This is even better. If you can really win, not only can you win the divine artifact that is no less than holy, but you can also get the secret key. Yao Linger quietly drew her red lips. Mao Yuner also had calculations in mind. Although Yi Feng's knife can be seen to be extraordinary, he doesn't know how much it is worth, but at least Yao Linger's machete is a good thing. Although she knew that this piece of copper was very precious, she did not know the specific function. If she could win the pair of knives and daggers by using this as a bet, it would bring a lot of income to their chamber of commerce. Before completing the task of father, if there is a windfall, it is also very good. Bright card. Super double. 4 twos. Wong bang. Shunzi ends. What? Throwing the card in his hand on the table, Yi Feng showed a happy smile. After one night, he didn't know how many springs he had played against the two of them. What a little trash. Seeing that it was another spring, the faces of the two women became more and more ugly. If it goes on like this, not only will the two of them not be able to win, but the only treasure in hand will probably have to lose. It's simply a matter of stealing chickens and losing money. To make matters worse, the rooster was already crowing outside, indicating that it was almost dawn. For a while, the anxious expressions on the faces of the two women became more and more intense. At this moment, Yi Feng stretched and stood up and said, I'll make it easier. I'll come back later. With that said, Yi Feng walked out of the door. After Yi Feng left, Mao Yuner bit her red lips, looked at Yao Linger and asked softly, what should I do? Yao Linger frowned thoughtfully. Then she raised her jade hand and took out a red porcelain vase. Mao Yuner opened her mouth slightly, and then also took out a white jade bottle. The two sides looked at each other at the same time, but they did not expect that both of them had made the same preparations, and there was an indescribable complexity in their hearts. Then, use yours or mine. Finally, Mao Yuner bit her red lips. Use it together. Yao Linger pondered slightly. Although her Tianxiang San practitioners are not immune either, but Yi Feng is not an ordinary monk, so to be on the safe side. She bit her teeth. He brought the water bottle next to him and poured all the medicines in the 2 bottles into it. Came back. After the medicine was finished, Yi Feng just hurried back to sit down again, looked at the poker in front of him and said, it's almost dawn, I'm so tired, why don't we just do this tonight? Saying that, he took Mao Yuner's copper piece and Yao Linger's pair of knives. Then I will laugh at this thing. Seeing this, the two women's faces became anxious, and they stretched out their palms and wanted to withdraw them. I'm willing to admit defeat, why not? Yi Feng said jokingly. But Yi Feng's joking words sounded to the two women, as if they were questioning, as if they were mocking. The two women drew back their palms at the same time, forced a smile, and said bravely, no, since if we lose, we will definitely be willing to admit defeat. That's right, just a little gadget, next time you win it back. Yi Feng smiled and took the 2 things into his arms. It's not that he wants these 2 things too much, just playing cards. Since there is such a lot of money, he must not break this rule, otherwise the next time he plays, there will be no such thing as a serious consideration. You're right, the 2 women nodded, but the smiles on their faces were uglier than crying. Just bleeding in my heart. However, fortunately, it is not without final preparations. As long as it succeeds in the end, after that, if you act like a spoiled child, you may be able to get something back, and maybe get other good things. With the same thought in mind, the 2 women looked at each other and said to Yi Feng with a smile, Sir, I have played cards all night, and I haven't had a few sips of water. Drink some water first, and sit here and rest. With that said, the 2 women poured a glass of water on Yi Feng. Don't be so polite, don't you guys also drink water? Yi Feng smiled, took the kettle, and poured a glass for the 2 of them. You guys also drink it. When the 2 women saw this, their hearts suddenly trembled, and their faces were extremely ugly. Why don't you just drink water? Why are you so nervous? Yi Feng asked suspiciously. No, The two women explained in unison. For fear that Yifeng would see something, they made a decision after looking at each other, and then raised the water cup. Maybe their performance after drinking will be more pleasing to this one. Thinking like this, the two of them no longer felt any pressure in their hearts, and after drinking the glass of water with Yifeng, they breathed a sigh of relief. Things are half done. Just delay for a while until the effect of the drug kicks in, and you're done. Unable to help, Yaolinger and Mao Yun'er were chatting with Yifeng one after another, and they gradually felt that the medicinal energy began to come up, and their whole body gradually became a little hot. And Yifeng seems to be. Oh, why is it suddenly a little hot? Yifeng fanned with his hand, feeling a little puzzled. Really, the two girls were overjoyed, and they were only one step away. However, Yifeng suddenly touched his stomach again, frowned and said, "Why is your stomach uncomfortable again? Wait a moment, I'll go to the toilet again." Hearing this, the two women looked anxious, but Yifeng had already walked out. After leaving the room, Yifeng rushed directly to the toilet. 1,000 miles away. What? Comfortable. However, the stomach hurts all the time today, and it's endless. It must be that the restaurant's things are not clean. Yifeng squatted in the pit and complained. However, the faces of the two women sitting in the room became more and more ugly. At this moment, the combination of the two bottles of medicinal energy was already straight to their foreheads. The body was hot and sweaty, the jade feet crushed the ground, and the jade hands couldn't help grabbing it on the table. First, why haven't you come back, sir? Mao Yun'er gritted her teeth and said word by word with difficulty. I don't know either. Yaolinger was also extremely uncomfortable. When this medicine was used, practitioners and mortals were no different at all. She felt that if she didn't find a place to vent now, she might explode. However, during the conversation, Mao Yun'er suddenly rushed towards her and grabbed her arm tightly. You go away. Yaolinger shouted violently, but looking at Mao Yun'er's appearance, as soon as she finished speaking, the red lips couldn't help but post towards Mao Yun'er. All of a sudden, the two girls were extremely hot. I'm back. Finally, Yifeng, who had gone to the toilet, walked back leisurely, pushed open the door, and saw that the two bodies were fighting together. Involuntarily, the whole person froze in place. Lily. Excuse me, benevolently good. After speaking, Yifeng was about to turn around and exit. First, sir, it's not like this, listen to us explain. When the two women saw this, their expressions changed greatly, and they wanted to catch up with the explanation, but the medicinal energy on their bodies could not make them take action, so they could only watch the door slam shut tightly. After exiting the door, Yifeng pouted, his face extremely complicated. Unexpectedly, these two girls look good on the surface, but they are actually like this behind their backs. I can't take it, I can't take it. Shaking his head, Yifeng stepped out of here. Before leaving, Yifeng did not forget to hang up the "Do Not Disturb" sign. One night passed quickly. Yifeng went home and took a nap, and continued to lie in the yard and play with the dog. Puff. In the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce, Mao Lin, who was sitting at the top, vomited out a mouthful of old blood, pointed at Mao Yun'er with trembling palms, and asked, You mean, not only did you fail, but you also took out a piece of priceless copper film, and was finally put to sleep by a woman. Mao Yun'er's crying eyes turned red, and Zan slumped on the ground, nodding his head in a daze. She never thought, the first time in her life. Actually. To a woman. What? At the same time, Ning Xuanwu of the Xuanwu sect was furious and asked in a hoarse voice, pointing to the demon in front of him, You said that your result this time is that you slept with a woman. Yaolinger's face was complicated. She knelt on the ground with her teeth clenched tightly, not daring to catch a breath. What about my double-star dark sword? Ning Xuanwu asked again. Lose. The demon spirit's voice came out like a mosquito chirping. As soon as her voice fell, Ning Xuanwu slumped on the stool, his anger surged, and his thick palms slammed into his chest with punches, and blood spit out from his mouth. Stop your anger, Sect Master, calm your anger. Sect Master, calm down. Seeing this scene, everyone in Ning Xuanwu was terrified, and they all knelt on the ground and exhaled. After a long time, Ning Xuanwu pointed at Yaolinger and said tremblingly, You go to Xuanwu Cliff to think about it, 1 year is not allowed to come out. Qingshan Gate. Master. Luo Lanzu respectfully came to the ancestor of Qingshan, and said softly, Nansha's first pharmacist, Master Lu Dashenglu has come to my Qingshan gate. What? When the ancestor Qingshan heard the words, he immediately sat up and said excitedly, Master Lu is here, why didn't you notify me earlier? I'm seeing Shizan that you are in retreat, so I didn't bother you. Luo Lanzu explained. Okay, where is Master Lu? I'll go see him. With that said, the ancestor of Qingshan got up quickly, and his expression became a lot more solemn. He didn't dare to neglect Lu Dasheng. As the #1 pharmacist in Nansha, although he is a loose cultivator, he has an unparalleled appeal. Even the great sects and aristocratic families in Nansha will be polite to him. Therefore, when such a person came to his Green Mountain Gate, it was undoubtedly a great Buddha. Lu Qingshan, I have seen Master Lu. Outside the door, the ancestor of Qingshan respectfully possessed himself, and a voice came from the door. The door quietly opened. Come in. A hoarse voice came from inside. Old ancestor Qingshan walked in, and on the futon sat an old man in a gray robe. Little Qingshan Gate, such a big shelf. Lu Dasheng slowly raised his head, looked at the ancestor of Qingshan, and said solemnly, It's amazing to let me Lu Dasheng wait for you here for half a month before leaving the customs. This slightly sarcastic remark made Patriarch Qingshan's face change slightly, and he quickly explained, Master Lu dare not, but I really don't know that Master Lu came here, and there is some negligence, and I hope to take care of it. That's it. Lu Dasheng waved his palm and said in a deep voice, Don't say those superficial words, I have only one purpose in coming to you. Recently I want to refine a 5-grade medicine for a certain Woang master in Nansha, but I need to borrow it. The flame beads of your Qingshanmen. Flame beads. Old ancestor Qingshan's expression changed slightly. I can promise you, as long as you are willing to lend the flame beads, not only do I owe you a favor, but you also sold a favor to that martial emperor master, such a good thing is impossible to find. Lu Dasheng looked at Qingshan. The ancestor said yo-yo. But Lu Qingshan's face became more and more ugly, and he lowered his head and said, To tell the truth Master Lu, your conditions are indeed very rich, but the flame bead is not in my Qingshanmen now, I have already given it away. What? Lu Dasheng's eyes sank. Lu Qingshan, are you kidding me? The flame bead is the treasure of your Qingshanmen town, you actually told me that you gave it away. Master Lu, that's true. Lu Qingshan quickly explained. HMPH, I don't care if you are real or not, I limit you to give me the flame beads within 7 days. Even if you really gave it away, you have to get it back for me. Lu Dasheng said without doubt. Old ancestor Qingshan had a troubled look on his face. This flame bead was given to Mr. Yifeng. How could he be so embarrassed to come back when he got there? And it would be a big trouble if it wasn't a small matter and caused Mr. S displeasure. Lu Dasheng raised his eyes. Master, I'm afraid this is really impossible. Qingshan ancestor said with a troubled face. If there are other requirements, I will meet Master Lu, but this time, please forgive me. Lu Dasheng squinted at the ancestor of Qingshan, and said leisurely, I am suddenly curious, who did you give this flame bead to, and you are so scruples? This. The ancestor of Qingshan smiled bitterly, but his words were full of respect, and said, That gentleman is something that I, Lu Qingshan, can evaluate at will, but he is my savior and the savior of my entire Qingshan gate. Oh, Lu Dasheng's eyes flickered with mockery, and you said, since you are so stubborn about this person, then I, Lu Dasheng, can't help but want to go and see you, but I want to see if that person is there. What you said was great. Master Lu, I'm afraid this is not very convenient. Sir, he stepped into the mundane world only to experience the life of ordinary people, so he does not like to be disturbed. Qingshan Patriarch quickly explained. If you say that, then I can see it, and I can see it. Lu Dasheng raised the corner of his mouth, and at the same time, the table next to him instantly turned into powder, and at the same time, a coercion pressed towards Qingshan ancestor. Seeing this, Lu Qingshan clenched his teeth tightly, and cold sweat dripped from his forehead, but he still insisted, Master Lu, it really can't be done. Humph. Lu Dasheng was furious, and swept out of the room with a stride, and instantly came to the side of Luo Lanzu who was waiting outside. The terrifying coercion shrouded, and his palms became claws and tightly held Luo Lanzu's neck. Seeing this, old ancestor Qingshan, who came after him, shouted, Stop. Ha ha. Lu Dasheng sneered. Then I want to ask you, are you taking me to meet the so-called mister in your mouth? For a time, the ancestor of Qingshan fell into a dilemma. The strength of Lu Dasheng's palm tightened by 2 points, and he said solemnly, don't worry, I just wanted to get the flame beads from him, and there was no other meaning. Okay. Looking at Luo Lanzu's increasingly difficult breathing, Qingshan Patriarch had no choice but to lower his head. That being the case, when I'm done with my work, in 5 days, you can take me to see him. Lu Dasheng sneered before letting go of Luo Lanzu in his hands. Old ancestor Qingshan nodded with an ugly expression. His expression was full of helplessness. I just hope you, sir, don't blame me for bringing someone to break your purity. Li Moqi, what are you doing? Let us out now. In a canyon behind Mufu Mountain, where birds and flowers are fragrant, it is peaceful and looks like a paradise on the surface. However, at this moment, there are dangers all over the place, and every step is startling. Wu Yonghong and others never imagined that after leaving the martial arts hall, Li Moqi brought them here on the grounds of treasure hunting and trapped them in it. Li Moqi, I warn you, if you don't let us go out, I, Chu Guangxi, will not share the sky with you. Chu Guangxi burst into anger and shouted at Li Moqi. And Sun Zug and Wu Yonghong also flashed deep hatred in their eyes. It never occurred to them that they were ensnared by their own people. Ha. Call it, it's useless for you to break your throat. Li Moqi's eyes flickered with sarcasm, and said, don't say it's going out, it's hard for you to move one step now. This place seems peaceful, but it's actually a place of natural danger. Not only is there a natural formation, it was here 30,000 years ago. It is still a relic of an ancient battlefield, and when those great powers fought, they blessed several great formations in their natural formations. Certainly, Li Moqi raised his head, and then sneered, it's not that I didn't add a layer of strength. In the original formation, I arranged 2 more layers, so even a god can't save you. What? Hearing this, Wu Yonghong's 3 people showed a deep and solemn expression, and their faces became bloodless. If this is the case, then the 3 of them can only wait to die here. Why did you do this? Wu Yonghong asked bitterly. Of course, it's because of the holy rake in your hand. Li Moqi sneered, you, Wu Yonghong, are not as strong as me, not as intelligent as me. Where did you get the qualifications to use such a good thing? You actually. Under the extreme anger, Wu Yonghong spat out a mouthful of blood. Bring it. Li Moqi just smiled coldly, waved his palm. Wu Yonghong had no resistance, and the holy rake in his hand came to Li Moqi. The gods changed hands, and Wu Yonghong was trembling with anger, but there was nothing he could do. The blessing of these multiple formations not only restricts their movements, but also oppresses their cultivation, so in Li Moqi's hands, they are fish on a sticky board. But Wu Yonghong was still not reconciled, gritted his teeth and said word by word, this god rake was given to me by Mr., and I have already made an oath to serve him. You plundered Mr.'s things, aren't you afraid that Mr. or you in trouble? That is, if you let Mr. know about this, you will be annihilated by flying ashes. Speaking of the one in the martial arts hall, Sun Zug and Chu Guangxi on the side seemed to have also seen hope, and they shouted at each other, hoping that Li Moqi would be afraid. Ha. However, Li Moqi laughed loudly. Why are you laughing? The 3 said coldly. I'm laughing at how naive you 3 are. Li Moqi raised the corner of his mouth and said coldly, to tell you the truth, I'm not afraid of him, and even the treasures in his martial arts hall make me miss it. You don't care about your husband so much, and you dare to covet his treasures. I'm afraid you don't know how to die. Wu Yonghong said coldly. Ha, you were right, that one is really scary. I usually don't dare to think about it, but recently, for me, Li Moqi, there is a godsend opportunity. Li Moqi raised the corner of his mouth. What God-given opportunity? Wu Yonghong and the 3 looked puzzled. Tomorrow happens to be a cloudy year, a cloudy moon, and a cloudy day that I rarely see in the Shanjiang continent in 10,000 years, so. Having said this, Li Moqi showed a deep and unfathomable color, and did not say any more. However, the 3 of Wu Yonghong's eyes widened. You actually know the Tianyan Great Formation that has been lost for 10,000 years, how could this evil formation, how could it be possible? For a time, the faces of the 3 of them turned pale. Ha, you 3 pedantic old people don't seem stupid. Li Moqi laughed loudly. Yes, this old man just learned the Tianyan Great Formation. As long as I set up the Tianyan Great Formation around the martial arts hall, immortals and below will lose their cultivation and do not know it, and then the awe-inspiring gentleman in your mouth will be a plaything in my hands. The words fell. The three people set off a storm in their hearts, and their faces became full of ashes. Because what Li Moqi said was right, this great formation was so terrifying. Of course, the conditions are also very harsh, and it needs to be in a cloudy year, a cloudy month, a cloudy day, a cloudy hour, and a cloudy moment to be able to last for a moment. Originally, at ordinary times, even if Li Moqi knew this great formation, it would be useless. But who would have thought that tomorrow would be a rare date in 10,000 years? By the way, may as well tell you, I will also seize the secret technique. Li Moqi said leisurely again. What? This sentence fell in the ears of Wu Yonghong and the three, like dropping a blockbuster. Do you want to deprive Mr. of luck? Wu Yonghong said with trembling lips, staring at Li Moqi. I can't think of it. Wu Yonghong, are you quite smart? Li Moqi said coldly. That person is so powerful that even I can't see the cultivation base, and I don't know if it's a martial sage or martial emperor, plus there are countless treasures. This kind of person should have great luck against the sky. Quote. And as long as I, Li Moqi, deprive him of his luck, maybe I can step into Emperor Wu, and even enter the legendary immortal warrior in my lifetime. The last time you were in the martial arts hall, you got the message of your husband's martial intentions, but you took revenge for your kindness and dared to shoot at your husband. I will fight with you. Wu Yonghong's neck flushed red. He didn't forget Yi Feng's generosity to him that day, and he didn't forget the benefits that he experienced in the martial arts hall last time. So for a while, he burst out with aura, and even forcibly broke free from the restrictions of the formation and attacked Li Moqi. Humph. However, Li Moqi interrupted Wu Yonghong's attack with just a wave of his hand. Do you really think this formation is for show? Li Moqi sneered. Sure enough, because of the breakaway just now, Wu Yonghong suffered a backlash from the formation, and immediately spit out a big mouthful of blood. Well, since you want to die, then I will satisfy you. With a move of Li Moqi's palm, a streak of energy fell directly onto Wu Yonghong's dantian. Crack! A blood hole appeared, accompanied by an explosion. Wu Yonghong stared, because Li Moqi directly abolished his cultivation. Old Wu. On the side, Chu Guangxi and Sun Zug sounded worried at the same time. Originally, you could live on for a while longer, but you can't do anything if you seek death yourself. Li Moqi smiled coldly. Without your cultivation, in a few days, you will die as humble as a mortal. Quote. Ha ha ha. With a wild laugh, Li Moqi crossed an arc in the air and swept in the direction of Pingzhong City. Ow. Ao Qing has not been having a good time recently. Even though he made breakthroughs next to Yi Feng, the feeling inside that small door was too uncomfortable for him. Guzi, what's wrong with you? Are you really so thirsty? Yi Feng looked at Guzi, rubbed his palm lightly, and said at the same time, don't worry, I will definitely help you when I have time. Solve. However, Guzi didn't hear Yi Feng's words at all. His eyes widened, looking at the small wooden door behind Yi Feng. He always felt that the things inside the small wooden door were about to come out. Is it a wild beast, or a peerless monster? Involuntarily, he swallowed. Crunch. Sure enough, the small door creaked and was gently pushed open. Ao Qing shivered almost subconsciously, his hair stood upright, and his eyes were fixed on him. Then, under the eyes of Ao Qing, a white Jingjing skull came out. Quack quack. Hiss. Seeing this skull, Ao Qing took a deep breath. Although he couldn't see the cultivation base on the skull, the sense of crisis it brought to him was extremely strong, and the skull was not angry at all. It was obviously a dead thing. But a dead object, why does it move? Why does it have such a strong deterrent? The dog can't figure it out. With a quick swipe, he ran to Yi Feng's feet. What the hell is going on? Yi Feng glared at Ao Qing angrily, and his eyes turned to the back. Seeing this skeleton, Yi Feng immediately screamed in fright, but he quickly recovered and rushed towards the skeleton angrily, kicking him directly. It's you mentally retarded thing again, scaring me to death. Yi Feng scolded directly. Looking at the skeleton, he was disgusted, and at the same time, he scolded the system fiercely in his heart. Because this is the most frustrating thing he has ever done. You say that you are a broken system, you can't teach him to make money, you can't teach him to practice. Yes, admit it. But your special reward is so sweet, which really makes Yifeng unable to bear it. Yes, this skeleton was given by Yifeng when he first integrated the system, but it's so useless, it's so annoying. Do nothing all day, floating around like a ghost. Later, Yifeng locked it in the utility room and even forgot about it. Who would have guessed that it would actually run out by himself? Abba Abba. After being kicked over and over again by Yifeng, Skull squatted on his upper and lower jaws, and slowly got up. I am Nima. As soon as Yifeng saw this product, his mentality collapsed, and he directly punched it with a fist. Crack. With a sound of ding dong, the skull head fell off and rolled under the corner of the wall. The rest of the body groped for a while on the ground, only to find the head, and then stumbled back. Stupid stuff, pretend it's the other way around. Yifeng shouted angrily. Abba Abba. The skull head continued to squat, his hands turned his head, and it took a long time to straighten it. Okay, it's not a good day. Yifeng was depressed, grabbed a black robe next to it and threw it on his head, shouting, put it on yourself, don't be so scary everywhere. Abba Abba. The skull was stumbling, and stumblingly put on the black robe. Due to his small physique, the whole body was wrapped in it. Afterwards, a black robe dangled in the yard, and no one knew what was going on. However, Ao Qing's eyes were about to fall. Especially when Yifeng beat up the skeleton, but the skeleton didn't react at all, he was even more horrified and could not calm down. Gee, the master is worthy of being the master, it is indeed terrifying. What? Yifeng stretched and felt bored. He got up and said, it's rare that the weather is so good, so you stay in the yard, and I'll go to the door to get some sunshine. With that said, Yifeng moved the stool to the steps at the entrance of the martial arts hall. Looking lazily at the passing crowd and listening to the bustling hawkers, there is no comfort. A shadow flashed across the crisscrossed buildings, and then stood tall on the roof, with coldness in his eyes, looking at the small martial arts hall not far ahead. His clothes were fluttering, and an abacus was hanging behind him. It was Li Moqi. The great array of Tianyan, the 8 directions, and the 16 gates have all been arranged. It's only half an hour away, it's the right time and place. The sound fell. He looked up to the sky. Those gloomy eyes slowly closed. The sky was surging and cloudy, and a layer of cold aura shrouded it. When the sound of the wind flowed, Li Moqi's eyes suddenly opened. The hour has come. Start. As his voice fell, in the sky, an invisible mist shrouded in the direction of the martial arts hall, and then covered the entire martial arts hall in it. The mysterious atmosphere drifted in the sky, and the entire martial arts hall was silent. HMPH, the great formation has been opened, unless you are an immortal, it is also a plaything in my hands. Li Moqi sneered, but I also knew that this special time was only for a moment, and I didn't dare to delay at all. When the robe was placed, the abacus behind him swept into the air. Wow wow wow, a piercing sonic boom sounded, and countless silver abacus beads fell off, like a high-altitude scatter, and then disappeared into chaos. Congeal. With his complicated handprints, the silver beads that disappeared condensed together, and then turned into a transparent long sword that spanned thousands of meters, and fell vertically toward the martial arts hall, reaching the eyebrows of Yifeng lying on the reclining chair. Laugh. In an instant, the entire Pingzhong city was covered with clouds and gusts of wind. Although it's just the full blow of my Wuzong, but without your cultivation, even if you are Emperor Wu, under this sword, you can only become a dead dog. Chapter 81. A time. The phantom sword was approaching straight down, getting closer and closer to Yifeng. However, Yifeng, who was lying on the reclining chair, didn't react in the slightest, completely unaware that the danger was coming. This day's cloudy formation is really terrifying. This person has no response to my attack, which means that he has been completely imprisoned and cultivated. At this point, the smug look on Li Moqi's face became more and more intense. Finally, the transformed long sword was only a few feet away from Yifeng, and the entire martial arts hall was shrouded in the sky-high sword light, dazzling. The next moment, it fell on Yifeng's eyebrows. Die. At the same time, Li Moqi, who was in the air, shouted, and his heart was extremely excited. What about Wu Sheng Wudi? Wasn't it under his calculations that he didn't even know how to die? Thinking that after Yi Feng's death, his treasures full of martial arts and his luck as a peerless master will be deprived of him, the smile on Li Moqi's face is extremely rich. But, next moment, his face suddenly solidified. What? The proud expression just now disappeared in a blink of an eye. Looking at the scene at the entrance of the martial arts hall, the whole person turned into an ice sculpture. Because of his martial sect's full-strength strike, the magic sword that was transformed with the sky-reaching skills, when it fell on Yi Feng, not only did not cause any damage to Yi Feng, but made his attack directly into nothingness. It seems, there has never been a general. How come? How is this possible? Li Moqi was in a cold sweat, his eyes widened, his mouth wide enough to hold a light bulb. Isn't he imprisoned and cultivated? Why is he able to block my blow? Li Moqi had 10,000 doubts in his heart. Even if there is a mistake in the Tianyan Great Array, the person resisting his own attack is still a little bit moving. Why does the attack turn into nothingness when it hits him? This is just too wicked. But then, he thought of something. After all, this person in front of him, even if he is not Emperor Wu, is at least a martial saint. Even if his cultivation is gone, his defensive power is still there. Thinking of this, a look of relief appeared on his face. I see. Li Moqi raised the corner of his mouth, the previous fear disappeared, and a sneer with confidence flooded his face again. Although this one's strength is terrifying, his full-strength blow failed to break the defense, but because of this, Li Moqi became even more crazy. After all, the stronger Yi Feng is, the more unparalleled the sense of accomplishment that killing him brings. Since your defense is monstrous, then I can only use other means. Li Moqi smiled coldly, and printed out a series of complicated handprints, which made the whole body turbulent. As time passed, his handprints became faster and faster, and suddenly many strange patterns appeared. Finally, when his last handprint fell, the corner of his mouth drank lightly. Death Gu, come out. The moment the sound fell, a bug the size of a bee slowly flew out of his mouth, and then, flapping its high-frequency wings, flew towards Yi Feng on the reclining chair. The life-threatening Gu flew out, and a sneer appeared on Li Moqi's face again. In front of my life-threatening Gu insect, it won't work for you to defend against the sky. Once you let him enter your body, even if your cultivation base is restored, you will only have to wait for death. Ha ha ha. Li Moqi smiled coldly. I am also proud of my many methods. If ordinary people are in this situation, I am afraid there is really no way. Buzz. Finally, the life-threatening worm approached Yi Feng and circled around Yi Feng's head. Then, under Li Moqi's nervous eyes, the life-threatening worm fluttered its wings and sprinted into Yi Feng's ear. It's done. Seeing getting closer, Li Moqi became more and more excited. But at this moment, Yi Feng suddenly turned over and cursed. Where did the flies come from, disturbing Lao Su's sleep? At the same time, he slapped his face impatiently and waved it out. Afterwards, under Li Moqi's stunned eyes, the life-threatening Gu worm that was about to enter Yi Feng's body was directly fanned away, and then smashed heavily on the wall beside him. Snapped. With a soft sound, it shattered and stuck to the wall, leaving only the body on the back that fell to the ground. Gah! At the moment when the life-threatening Gu insect was shot to death, Li Moqi's eyes almost burst out, and his face was full of horror. At the same time, the body suffered a backlash, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. But he didn't care about his body that suffered backlash, and he didn't even care to take another look at his life-threatening Gu worm that he had raised for thousands of years. Terrible. So evil. Right now, he just wanted to escape from this place, and it was best to run as far as he could. Ming Tianyan Great Array will take effect. Obviously his cultivation base is restricted. Why is it still like this? He really can't figure it out. And his life-killing Gu worm is not only capable of killing people invisibly, its body is famous for defying the sky. Whether it is burnt or flooded, or even a slap from Emperor Wu, it may not be able to kill. The body of the life-threatening Gu insect was shattered. However, that person just slapped it so casually, and his life-threatening Gu worm was smashed to pieces, broken bones. When he remembered the tragic state of his life-threatening Gu worm, he seemed to see himself. So at this moment, he no longer dared to pay attention to the martial arts hall, and he no longer had the intention to deprive Yi Feng of his luck. He almost fled at a speed he had never experienced in his life, for fear that the man at the entrance of the martial arts hall would chase after him. In less than a quarter of an hour, Lee Moki turned into a streamer in midair, fled the area where Pingzhong City was, and came to the airspace not far from Qingshan Gate. Call. Fine. Seeing that there were no chasing soldiers behind, Lee Moki breathed a sigh of relief, sweating profusely. However, as soon as he took a breath, the next moment he was shocked. Not far in the sky in front of him, a man in black robe appeared at some point. A large robe covered his whole body, and at the same time his head was lowered, so he couldn't see his appearance clearly. But the appearance of this person brought a great sense of crisis to Lee Moki. He was like a person with no cultivation, and he didn't have the slightest momentum in his body. He just stood in the air, motionless. What's even more incredible is that when Lee Moki closed his eyes and felt his surroundings, he couldn't feel the existence of this person at all. Who are you? Lee Moki asked in a panic. Under the black robe, there was no sound at all. Lee Moki raised his eyes, and the soles of his feet turned into an arc, and they swept away in different directions from the black-robed man. Obviously, he didn't want to entangle with this black-robed man who couldn't see his origin. After all, this black-robed man's strangeness brought him a huge sense of oppression. However, he just rushed out and found that the man in black robe appeared in front of him again. Still standing quietly in the void, still without the slightest breath. But Lee Moki's face changed drastically, because he couldn't even see clearly how the black-robed man moved in front of him, as if he was already there. Who the hell are you? Lee Moki was sweating coldly, but he still gritted his teeth and asked. The man in black robe still stood quietly, without the slightest fluctuation. HMPH, pretending to be a ghost, since you don't tell me, then it's my fault. Lee Moki snorted coldly, knowing that the man in black robe would not let him leave, so it's better to do it first. As his voice fell, Wuzong's aura spread out in midair, turning his palm over, turning it into a palm, and bombarding the black-robed man overwhelmingly. Boom boom boom. A series of shock waves hit the black-robed man, like layers of waves, layer upon layer. Under this vast attack, the entire sky turned into a vacuum, and even became directly distorted. Is there a master fighting? When Lee Moki launched his attack, at the Qingshan Gate not far away, Lu Dasheng, who was in retreat, suddenly opened his eyes, and then turned into a streamer and swept into the air, rushing in the direction of the battle fluctuations. Lee Moki's monstrous attack attacked the man in black robe. However, the man in black robe was still standing quietly, showing no signs of resisting his attack. HMPH, anyway, I, Lee Moki, are also a master of martial arts. If you are so arrogant in the face of my attack, then you will suffer the consequences. Lee Moki said with a cold voice, but he also did not dare to underestimate his opponent. The power is a little stronger. However, what he didn't expect was that his monstrous attack landed on the man in black robe, but there was no movement at all. Not even the ripples caused a trace. Crack. Seeing this scene, Lee Moki was almost scared out of his guts, and instantly stopped the attack, and the sole of his foot chopped into the void, turning into an arc and swept out. Now he has only one word. Run. In just one breath, Lee Moki swept several thousand feet in the air. At this moment, the man in black robe, who had been silent for a while, finally moved, and the black robe sleeve slowly lifted up. At the same time, Lee Moki, who was fleeing like the wind thousands of feet away, suddenly froze. His whole body seemed to be stuck in a quagmire, and he suddenly couldn't move his steps. What? Lee Moki's face changed dramatically. But he was still terrified behind him, and a majestic force quietly permeated towards him, sucking him away from behind. In less than a moment, he had returned to the side of the man in black robe, standing upright in the air, unable to move. With a pale face, he understood that at this moment, he was simply the fish meat on the sticky board of this black-robed man. You. Who are you? With this method, Lee Moki became frightened and stammered, staring at the man in black and asked nervously. The black-robed man was silent. Then what are you going to do to me? And I have no grudges with your excellency in the past, so why do you treat me like this? Lee Moki asked again anxiously. No injustice. Finally, under the black robe, a voice came out for the first time, but the voice was unclear, and it didn't sound like a human being. What do you mean? Lee Moki's face changed dramatically, remembering his behavior in the martial arts hall just now, and suddenly said, "Are you Yifeng from that martial arts hall?" "No, no, no." But the next moment, Li Moqi shook his head shiveringly. "When you first appeared, it was still overcast, and the effect of the Tianyan Great Array was still there. You couldn't chase it out of the martial arts hall, unless you are not bound by the Tianyan Great Array. Your cultivation is immortal." Ga. As soon as he said this, Li Moqi suddenly thought of the impossible. This sentence seemed to tell him the answer, and asked in shock, "Are you really a fairy?" "No, I'm just a servant." Under the black robe, there was finally a voice that sounded unpleasant, but at the same time was completely emotionless. "Servant, servant," Li Moqi stuttered, pointed at the man in black robe and said, "Aren't you Yifeng?" "Of course I'm not the master." A voice came from under the black robe. Hearing this, Li Moqi's pupils were enlarged, and his face was inconceivable. The person in front of him was so powerful. He thought it was Yifeng, the master of the martial arts hall, wearing a black robe, but it was not, but a servant of Yifeng. Gosh, Li Moqi felt that his brain was about to explode. Such a powerful expert is actually just Yifeng's servant. Then, that Yifeng. Li Moqi held back the horror in his heart, stared at the man in black robe and said word by word, "Who is he, really, is he a fairy?" After asking this sentence with difficulty, Li Moqi looked at the man in black robe nervously. Finally, the black robe slowly raised his head, revealing his true face for the first time. It was a skull with no flesh and blood, but only empty eyes. What made Li Moqi feel even more distraught was that the skull's jaw was upturned, as if showing an evil and charming expression. Of course he's not a fairy. Hearing this, Li Moqi breathed a sigh of relief, but also, how could an existence like a fairy be in such a small place? "I am afraid that something happened to the Tianyan Great Array, and it failed to restrain the people in the martial arts hall." But the next moment, the voice from under the black robe made Li Moqi's soul fly away. "He is God." Crack. Li Moqi was directly stuck in the throat by this fluttering sentence. But in the blink of an eye, he shook his head violently, full of disbelief. "No, it's impossible. How can there be a god in this world? And I, Li Moqi, how could I possibly meet a god? Even if he is a god, how could he come to this small city of Pingzhong? God. What is God? God is an existence that is countless times higher than immortals. He is in charge of the laws of heaven and earth. Even Emperor Wu, in front of God, is just like an ant. How could such a high-level being beyond the realm be able to succumb to such a place? Nothing is impossible." Under the black robe, there were gloomy words, "And you said, after all, as a master and servant, I am also a god." "You fart," Li Moqi shouted frantically. "Do you think your god is Chinese cabbage? Where can you find it?" "Jia Jia." In response to Li Moqi, there was a gloomy and weird smile. Under the slightly raised black robe, the skull and the lower jaw seemed to be raised slightly again. Then, the black robe sleeves waved. Boom. With a roar, a thunderstorm fell on Li Moqi, and at the same time, a torrential rain started falling all over his body. Crack. But the next moment, the torrential rain stopped abruptly, extreme ice spread in the sky, and Li Moqi was instantly frozen into an ice sculpture. Laugh. After a while, the sky was shrouded in fireworks, and Li Moqi, who had just turned into an ice sculpture, was instantly blurred by roasted flesh and blood. Call. The fire just went out, and another gust of wind covered Li Moqi. Under this strong hurricane, Li Moqi's whole body became twisted. Ah ah ah! The severe pain caused Li Moqi to let out an earth-shattering scream. In just an instant, Li Mo was baptized by wind, fire and thunder. Under this baptism, Li Moqi's whole person became dilapidated, with fear in his eyes. While staring at the man in black robe, he said tremblingly, "Nature. Natural law, is this the legendary law of nature? So, do you believe it? If you don't believe me." Before he finished speaking, the man in black robe suddenly raised his palm again. For a time, Li Moqi's eyes widened, because at this time he felt that time was passing quickly, and he experienced countless spring, summer, autumn and winter in an instant, and his skin and body were also aging rapidly. Ah! A shrill scream came from Li Moqi's mouth, and his eyes were full of bloodshots, because the means of the man in black robe in front of him was not pain on his body, but psychological fear. Just imagine how it feels when a person can even see the passage of time with the naked eye and watch his body grow old with the naked eye. This is the law of time. Are you really a god? Li Moki stared at his pupils, his whole body trembling violently. He wanted to live very much, but now he couldn't even raise his mind to escape, and the remorse in his heart was turning green. He never imagined that he would not open his eyes to plunder God's things, to plunder God's luck. It's not like this as a bird who plays the Lord of Hell, looking for death. But on the other hand, he was not reconciled. What the heck, how unlucky it is to kick such a thick iron plate. Forget it, die. The man in black robe seemed to have no interest in Li Moki, and when he grasped it out of thin air, Li Moki's body burst, and he didn't even leave a bubble, it turned into nothingness. Run, run, run. The scene here was seen by Lu Dasheng, who was hiding in the dark. Although he couldn't feel the passing of the laws around Li Moki, he could clearly feel the cultivation base on Li Moki's body. Wuzong Master. However, this black-robed man killed him easily. Does it mean that the black-robed man in front of him is at least a martial lord, or a martial arts master? Therefore, Lu Dasheng, who was afraid of being implicated, could no longer care about watching the play and ran away. But as soon as he moved, he felt that his body was deep in the quagmire and it was difficult to move. Then, a big hand appeared behind him and grabbed him directly. Lu Dasheng was so frightened that he lost his mind and wailed, "Senior, senior, I was wrong, I was just passing by." Passing by. The black-robed man made a gloomy voice. The pure and pure voice made Lu Dasheng's soul fly away, and the martial arts masters were easily killed in this person's hands. He was a little martial emperor, in this man's hands, wouldn't he look like a small earthworm? Senior, I really passed by. Lu Dasheng was trembling all over, his legs were weak, and he hurriedly explained, by the way, I am the #1 pharmacist in Nansha, and I can make emperors. Ping medicine, as long as you need it, senior, I am willing to serve, I just ask you to spare my life. You think I'll need imperial medicine? The black-robed man said gloomily. Hearing this, Lu Dasheng's face was extremely ugly. He thought that relying on his identity as the #1 pharmacist in Nansha, he could make this person jealous, but he neglected the existence of Wuzong who could kill Wuzong at will. Keep an eye on it. Slap yourself 100 times and roll as far as you want. However, it seemed that the man in black robe had no interest in Lu Dasheng at all, and after he left a sentence leisurely, he disappeared. Seeing this, Lu Dasheng, who was still nervous just now, breathed a sigh of relief. But in the next moment, another voice appeared in his mind. If you don't smoke, keeping you will be worse than the death of that person. This sentence made Lu Dasheng feel as if he was struck by lightning, and his face was bitter, and he stood there with a face full of regret. What kind of resentment did I cause? So I ran to watch the fun, but when I came across this, I couldn't be more reconciled, but thinking of the man's methods, he didn't dare to gamble. He had no choice but to lift a heavy slap and slap his face. The ancestor of Qingshan, who was chasing after Lu Dasheng, has only arrived now. As soon as he arrived, he saw Lu Dasheng stepping on the void and slapped himself. At the same time, he was still counting in his mouth, for fear of missing one. Lu, Master Lu, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this to yourself? Old ancestor Qingshan frowned and asked cautiously. Roll. Lu Dasheng drank violently, and directly poured his anger on Qingshan patriarch. Old ancestor Qingshan shuddered when he saw this, and left quickly. After a long time, he turned around and saw Lu Dasheng slapped himself. Maybe something happened to the family. Forget it, after all, we don't dare to say or ask. Shaking his head, old ancestor Qingshan left with a complicated expression. The sleepy-eyed Yi Feng only woke up at this time. Just as he was about to pour a glass of water, he found that the skeletal head that had been bouncing around in the courtyard was gone. Teacher, what about that shit? Yi Feng asked loudly. Just now, I was here just now, but I'll be gone in a while. Zhang Qing said quickly. This worry-free thing ran out to cause trouble for me again. Yi Feng's face sank, full of anger. Don't you think it's hard to tell what you look like? It's weird to run out like that and not be scared to death. Stop practicing, hurry up and find me. Yi Feng hurriedly ordered, and hurriedly dressed and ran outside. On the street, although it is late autumn, the weather has improved a bit in recent days, so the streets have resumed their usual liveliness, and many people even came out to buy supplies for the next winter. Of course, as long as there is a street, there is absolutely no shortage of women who love to go shopping. In the rouge shop not far away, several little girls were wearing fancy dresses, their thighs were exposed, and while wiping the rouge, they were talking and laughing. Suddenly, a dark figure squeaked over and rubbed his head down behind the little girls. After rubbing for a long time, a small white head appeared under the black robe, and the upper and lower jaws were clacking, revealing the color of excitement. Seeing no one around, a white palm quietly leaked out from the sleeve of the robe. Then, he stretched out towards the little girl's petals. Seeing that it was about to succeed, a scud suddenly appeared out of thin air and kicked it on the forehead. Bad pen stuff. What I don't worry about, it really gets me in trouble again. Yi Feng directly grabbed the black robe and covered it all in it, giving him a violent beating. And Yi Feng's actions caused a commotion in the crowd. Hit the dog, beat the dog. Yi Feng had to explain with embarrassment on his face, and after another violent beating, he grabbed the black robe and dragged the entire skull to the house. After dragging it into the store, Yi Feng became angrier the more he thought about it, and kicked it with both feet again. This piece of shit never made him worry. Today, I didn't ruin the vegetable garden in Uncle Wang's house, and tomorrow I'll kill Aunt Lee's cow. I didn't expect this to eat the guts of an ambitious leopard and act like a salty pig's hand. But the most hateful thing is that this thing is like a maggot in the Tarsus. He threw it and ran back. He dug a hole and buried it, then climbed out again. Finally, lock him up. After a few days of Anand's birthday, he came out in a special way. In short, all kinds of methods were exhausted, and he couldn't get rid of it. Abba Abba. Suddenly, the black robe wriggled for a while, and a skeleton head appeared, slapping the upper and lower jaws, and a sound came out towards Yi Feng. I am your sister. Yi Feng's arrogance, which had just weakened a little, was lit again, and he gritted his teeth and said, this time I demolished you, let's see what else you can do. Saying that, Yi Feng knocked down its skull with a fist, and rolled on the ground. However, the skull rolled on the ground opened its mouth again. Abba Abba. At the same time, the skeleton frame at Yi Feng's feet suddenly stretched out a palm, and then raised a middle finger towards Yi Feng. Oh, you still learn quite alike. Ever since Yi Feng once stood up to someone else, this piece of shit has often been learned in a good way. This suddenly made Yi Feng so angry that he stepped on the skull frame under his feet and began to dismantle it. Master, someone is looking for it outside. At this moment, Zhang Qing came over and said respectfully, it seems to be someone from the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce. People from the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce. Yi Feng frowned and asked in a deep voice, what are the people from the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce coming to me for? It is said that Master's previous book of Dream of Red Mansions still has some money, so please go and get the money. Zhang Qing said. Don't go, or ask him to send it over. The way is different, and Yi Feng doesn't want to pay attention to them at all. It doesn't matter if they don't send it. Anyway, the book doesn't have a lot of money, so it's a big deal. But Master, they also sent someone to invite a sedan chair. Zhang Qing said again, said Master must go by himself. Yi Feng frowned, and then said, well, disciple, you can go for a walk in my place, get the money back and leave the rest alone. Yes, Master. Zhang Qing nodded respectfully. After Zhang Qing left, Yi Feng continued to dismantle the skull. After much effort, he disassembled the skull's torso, palms, legs, etc., and then locked it in different rooms. And the skull was also pressed under the manhole cover by Yi Feng. After clapping his hands, Yi Feng showed a satisfied smile. Just as he stretched out to take a sip of water, a man hurriedly rushed to the door, and at the same time he shouted anxiously, Master Yi, no, something happened. What's wrong? Yi Feng quickly ran out. The person who came was the servant of the beef restaurant opposite, and the servant hurriedly shouted, Master Yi, your little apprentice Zhang Qing has an accident, I'm afraid it won't work, hurry up and have a look. What? Yi Feng's face changed, and he didn't even have time to close the door, so he ran out with the servant of the beef noodle restaurant. Then the two came to an alley. At both ends of the alley, there are many people watching, pointing to the alley and talking about it. And as soon as Yi Feng came, a bloody smell rushed towards him, the corpses on the ground, the sedan chairs had long been attacked, and the sedan chairmen had long since lost their voices. Zhang Qing, on the other hand, was lying on the ground and looked at Yi Feng with a dying breath. Obviously, Zhang Qing, who was in the sedan chair, was attacked, and a big battle broke out. Apprentice. Yi Feng rushed towards Zhang Qing directly, checking Zhang Qing's injury, and his eyes suddenly turned red. Master, Master, I'm afraid I can't do things. Zhang Qing was covered in blood and said weakly. No, it's impossible, don't talk, Master won't let you die. Yi Feng resisted the anger in his heart, picked up Zhang Qing and ran, then rushed to the martial arts hall. After returning to the martial arts hall, Yi Feng hurriedly put Zhang Qing on the bed, and then brought out all the medicines at home. First to stop the bleeding for Zhang Qing, and then to treat the wound. After being busy for most of the day, Zhang Qing's breath calmed down and he was out of danger. Yi Feng breathed a sigh of relief. But his eyes were replaced by anger, and there was a raging flame in his eyes. No matter who it is, even if I go bankrupt, I will ask you to pay with blood. Waste. A bunch of rubbish. If you can't handle such a little thing, what's the use of me raising you? In the hall of the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce, Mao Lin looked at several of his subordinates who were kneeling, and at the same time as his palms fell towards the table, a violent voice came from his mouth. During this time, he was under great pressure. Especially after his daughter was defeated in person, she faced opposition from the entire Chamber of Commerce. When there was no way out, he came up with such a solution. Since Yi Feng can't work for his Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce, he will directly destroy it, which can also help Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce get out of trouble. But he never imagined that he finally came up with such a plan, but it didn't work at all. President Atonement. The head of his subordinates knocked on the ground and explained respectfully, we didn't know that Yi Feng didn't come, but his apprentice. Humph. Mao Lin snorted coldly and said, since you guys later found out that it wasn't Yi Feng, why did you have to fight the grass and startle the snake? After Yi Feng was prepared, wouldn't it ruin the chance to attack him next time? We see that Yi Feng is indeed ready to stop. The leader's subordinate said with an ugly face. However, after his disciple saw that our target was Yi Feng, he himself took the lead in attacking us. Yes, and this little fool is not bad at all, he just killed several of our brothers with his bare hands. Humph, you know how to find a reason. Mao Lin was furious. He didn't kill Yi Feng this time. Next time, if he wants to find an opportunity, it may not be so easy. Forget it, father, bypass them. At this time, a young man dressed in Chinese clothes walked in with a faint smile on his face. The person who came was Mao Lin's son, Mao Yuner's eldest brother Mao Yi. Yer, what time is it now, why are you still so relaxed? Mao Lin looked at Mao Yi with a reproachful look, and said earnestly, don't you know that I do these things, even at the expense of your sister? Is it all for you? If I, the president, are taken down, it will be more difficult for you to ascend to this position in the future than to ascend to the sky. Father, you misunderstood, Mao Yi said with a smile. Of course I know what my father is thinking, but it's useless for you to blame them. Besides, isn't it just a little Yi Feng, you can write too, what's the big deal? Yes, it is not easy to kill him. But according to Yuner's words, this Yi Feng is not as simple as it seems. Mao Lin said earnestly. I heard that there are cultivators approaching him, and his relationship with the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce is not trivial. You must understand that the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce is blatantly robbing our business and we dare not do anything to them. It's because Yin Shang's precious daughter is in Qingshanmen. What's that? Mao Yi sneered. Even if he is not simple, he is at most a low-level cultivator. As for him and the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce, it is only a matter of interest. But even if he is a low-level cultivator, he is still a cultivator. Mao Lin said worriedly. Father, you are also the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Advanced practitioners are indeed beyond our reach, but we may not be able to afford practitioners who can deal with Yi Feng. Mao Yi smiled meaningfully. As soon as the voice fell, 3 men walked in from outside the door. The 3 men were powerful, and they carried a murderous aura. As soon as they walked in, they put a lot of pressure on Mao Lin. These 3 are. Maureen said with his eyes wide open. These 3 are the cultivators I invited. They will help us solve Yi Feng directly, and their cultivation has already reached the martial spirit. Mao Yi said leisurely. Wu Ling. Hearing this, Mao Lin groaned in his heart. He never imagined that these three people were actually martial spirits, which were characters he had never been in contact with. So, father, just put your heart at ease. Mao Yi said with a smile on his face. There are 3 martial arts masters who shot, and a little Yifeng, even if he has a little cultivation, he is not crushed. Dead share. But, Mao Lin approached Mao Yi and asked softly, it must have cost a lot to invite these 3 people, right? Father, don't worry, we mortals and other treasures they don't like. Speaking of which, Mao Yi raised his mouth slightly and said, they just need me to help them find 100 young women. 100 young women. Mao Lin was overjoyed. If so, it seems that this transaction is a bloody profit for their father and son. And there are 3 martial spirits who shot, killing Yifeng is definitely not a problem. So Mao Lin smiled and said to the 3 adults, as long as you help us get this matter, let alone 100 young women, I will help you find 200. Very good. The 3 of them sat down and listened to Mao Lin's words, nodded with satisfaction, raised the corner of his mouth and sneered, when we take a day off, the little fool you mentioned will be handed over to us. After settling Zhang Qing, Yifeng walked out of the martial arts gym with a gloomy face. The mastermind behind this matter does not need to think that he knows who they are, and even a little guess can guess their purpose. It must be that the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce wanted to take his own life for profit, but his apprentice Zhang Qing helped him resist. Although he is only a mortal, it has always been his way of doing things. Soon, Yifeng came to the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce. When the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce saw that it was Yifeng who came to the door in person, he did not dare to be slighted, put down everything in his hand, and came to receive him in person. Mr. Yi, please have some tea. Yin Shang stretched out his hand and said nervously. However, Yifeng did nothing. This can't help making Yin Shang extremely anxious. He sits beside Yifeng like acupuncture, thinking frantically whether there is something that makes Yifeng unhappy. Because Yifeng had a gloomy face since he entered the door, and never said a word from beginning to end. Finally, when Yin Shang couldn't bear the pressure, Yifeng, who was always silent, finally raised his head, looked at Yin Shang and said, President Yin. I'm here, Mr. Yi. Seeing Yifeng finally speaking, Yin Shang was shocked and quickly responded. Your Chamber of Commerce should be able to kill people, right? Yifeng said again. What? However, Yin Shang didn't react at once. I mean, I want to kill a few people. Yifeng finally took the tea, remembered the injury of his precious apprentice, and squinted his eyes and said, because, someone almost killed my apprentice. What? Someone dared to kill Mr. Yi, your apprentice? Yin Shang suddenly stood up and widened his eyes. Hearing this, it was a little too shocking. Although he didn't know exactly who Yifeng was, he also knew. However, someone did something to his apprentice. This thing can be big or small. Once it is not handled well, let this person get angry, I am afraid that the entire Pingjiang city will be greatly changed. So, is there a way? Yifeng raised his head and asked, of course, you can mention what kind of reward you need. There is a way, of course there is a way. Yin Shang said this sentence almost tremblingly, ignoring what Yifeng said about the reward. Very good. Yifeng nodded and said, then I want to see the head of the main messenger, okay? Yes, I, Yin Shang, promise here. Yin Shang patted his chest and said quickly. But, it may be someone from the Pingjiang Chamber of Commerce. Yifeng added. Of course, there is no evidence for the time being, and you need to check it. Don't worry, sir, I will find out the details as soon as possible, no matter who it is, and then put the head of the messenger behind the scenes in front of you. Yin Shang raised his palm and said solemnly. Okay, sorry to trouble you. Yifeng drank the tea and got up and left. Originally, he just guessed that the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce might have such a killer activity, and he didn't expect much, but now it seems that it is a pleasant surprise. After sending Yifeng away, Yin Shang didn't dare to stay for a moment. He took 2 of his subordinates and drove his horse towards Qingshan Gate. Quickly, Yin Shang found Luo Lanzu. What? When Luo Lanzu heard about the incident, her face turned pale, and she immediately understood the seriousness of the matter, and said quickly, Uncle, I will take you to see the master now, and you will tell me the whole thing before and after. Yes. Yin Shang nodded his head, but he was also very nervous. It had long been rumored that the ancestor of Qingshan, but this was the first time he had seen him. Master, I have something to ask for. Outside the secret room, Luo Lanzu shouted respectfully with Yin Shang. Teacher, I have learned from my teacher's recent use of Mr. S treasured sword. No matter what it is, you should retreat first. From the secret room, the majestic voice of the ancestor of Qingshan came out. Master, this is a very important matter. Luo Lanzu said anxiously. I said, no matter what the important thing is, don't disturb my retreat. Qingshan ancestor's voice was a little sullen. If you interrupt my understanding, you can't take the responsibility. Please calm down, Master, this matter is probably more important than your perception. Luo Lanzu bit her red lips and said directly, Sir's apprentice, young Master Zhang Qing, was almost killed. What? As soon as Luo Lanzu's words fell, an unbelievable voice came from inside, and then, boom, the ancestor of Qingshan exploded directly. Afterwards, the blue-veined ancestor Qingshan grabbed Luo Lanzu's jade palm and asked, what did you just say? Under the dignified gaze of the ancestor Qingshan, Yin Shang trembled and told the story before and after. There is no reason for this, there is no reason for this. After listening to Yin Shang's words, the ancestor of Qingshan burst into anger, pushed out with a palm, and a building not far away was directly razed to the ground. Among the ruins, the third elder crawled out in dismay, and shouted with grievances, Old ancestor, you demolished my house again, why is this? Roll. Old ancestor Qingshan shouted and ignored him at all, looking back at Luo Lanzu. Share. Exist. You immediately notify Zhu Yun and other high-level sect leaders to gather at the Qingshan Hall. Yes. Luo Lanzu didn't dare to delay, the light and beautiful body swept gently and disappeared. You hurry back down the mountain now, and find out for your husband who is so courageous. The ancestor of Qingshan instructed Yin Shang again. Yes, Master Qingshan. Yin Shang didn't even bother to take a sip of water, and rushed down the mountain with two of his subordinates. Qingshan Hall. Old ancestor Qingshan sat on the head with a gloomy face. Next, Zhu Yun, Luo Lanzu and the other elders all lowered their heads with solemn expressions on their faces. A time. The whole hall was filled with a thick layer of coercion, and those who were weaker could not breathe. Master, this matter is no trivial matter. Luo Lanzu walked out first and quickly analyzed. According to uncle's words, Mr. is very angry about this matter. Sister is right. Yin Luoli, who was young, also came out angrily and said, Mr. is very kind to my Qingshanman, but on my Qingshanman's sight, his disciple was almost mutilated. We have to give Mr. Yes, sir, he did not do it directly, but notified the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce. The intention is already obvious, just to remind us that we need to give him an explanation. The owner Zhu Yun also said solemnly, so we must treat it seriously and make your husband feel satisfied, otherwise if you really wait until your husband does it yourself, we can't afford this anger. So master, you should come up with an idea as soon as possible, what should you do specifically? Luo Lanzu said solemnly as she looked at the ancestor Qingshan above. Humph. Old ancestor Qingshan's face was gloomy, his palm suddenly slapped, and the stone table next to him suddenly turned into powder. No matter who attacked young Master Zhang Qing, none of them can escape. After saying that, he waved his palm, and the sound like a bell spread throughout the hall. Pass my order. Exist. Open the mountain protection formation. Notify the 12 elders and 18 guardians. Send 36 heavenly gangs and 72 earthly evil spirits, and leave none of the 108 disciples under the sect. Zhu Yun will lead them all down the mountain. I want to make those wicked people who make Mr. angry regret coming into this world. As soon as the words of Qingshan ancestors fell, the hall was shocked. Such a lineup, even when Qingshanmen faced a sect war, was unprecedented. But it is true, if the anger cannot be eliminated, I am afraid that there is no need for the existence of Qingshanmen. Yes, so for a while, a deafening voice sounded in the Qingshan Hall, and then a stream of light flew out from the Qingshan Hall, sending out one after another astral wind. At the 108 entrances of Qingshan Gate, countless disciples were waiting in line, and they started directly towards Pingzhong City. The sound of stepping on the ground was deafening. At the same time, 36 heavenly gangs and 72 earth shackles rode on the flying monsters raised by the sect, formed an array in the sky, formed a huge shadow on the ground, and roared towards the sky of Pingzhong City. In the end, under the leadership of Zhu Yun, the 12 elders and 18 guardians, stepping on the void, flew out with a powerful pressure. The speed was fast and the momentum was strong, like pieces of meteorites from outside the sky. In Pingzhong City, the business of the entire Baofeng Chamber of Commerce suddenly stopped, all the shops were closed, and countless intelligence personnel were dispatched. In less than half an hour, a flying pigeon biography sent from the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce fell into the hands of the ancestors of Qingshan. The note was opened, and his face was filled with murderous intent. Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. Die. With an order, the huge lineup of Qingshanmen headed towards the location of the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. This moment, Pingzhong City suddenly changed. In the hall of the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce, Mao Lin was on the left, Mao Yi was on the right, and invited the 3 martial arts masters to the upper seat, and they were talking and laughing and drinking wine. The president is not good. At this moment, a man with a butler's eyes hurried over. What's going on? Mao Lin put down the glass heavily and said in a deep voice, "Didn't you see that I was drinking with the 3 adults, why did you rush in so recklessly?" President, something has happened. The steward said anxiously. According to the report from the spies we placed in the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce, Yifeng and the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce have already closed their doors and are ready to attack my Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. What? Mao Lin's face sank. I also didn't expect that the dignified Baofeng Chamber of Commerce would close its doors because of Yifeng, and even attack him Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce. This is indeed a big deal. If you don't get it right, it's a battle between the 2 sessions. You accompany the 3 adults to drink, and I'll go see what's going on. Mao Lin immediately ordered. He didn't dare to take such a thing lightly. President Mao, what are you doing? Continue to sit down and drink. However, as soon as Mao Lin was about to leave, one of the martial arts masters shouted leisurely, "Are you just leaving the 3 of us here and watching?" Very impolite. Hearing this, Mao Lin's face was filled with disgust, and he lowered his head and said, "Sir, you heard it just now. That Baofeng Chamber of Commerce actually closed the shop door and wanted to attack my Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce for the sake of that little fool. Chief, you have to take charge of the overall situation. Furthermore, isn't the kid still here for 3 drinks at a loss?" However, the martial arts expert did not mean to let Mao Lin leave, but raised the corner of his mouth and knocked on the stool without question. Seeing this, Mao Lin sat down with a troubled face. But in my heart, I was still thinking about the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce. President Mao, why are you so worried? That Wu Ling seemed to see what Mao Lin was thinking, and sat back on the chair and tapped the table with his fingers. Isn't it just a small chamber of commerce? With us here, you are still afraid what? Hearing this, Mao Lin's eyes lit up with a troubled face. Yup, he has 3 martial arts masters by his side, why is he afraid of the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce? However, he was still a little concerned, and said cautiously, "Sir, if it is a pure Baofeng Chamber of Commerce, we are not afraid. The key is that the Baofeng Chamber of Commerce has something to do with Qingshanmen." Qingshan Gate. The Wuling snorted coldly and said, "Although the ancestor of Qingshan has some strength, our 3 brothers are also in the realm of Wuling. Do you think that his Qingshanmen would rather offend the 3 of us because of a small chamber of commerce? Spirit. I think, which is more important, how to choose, then Qingshanmen should have some idea in mind." Yes. After listening to the analysis of this Wuling expert, Mao Lin suddenly slapped his thigh. The worries in my heart were instantly swept away. Come on, 3 adults, I, Mao Lin, respect you. Mao Lin said with a rosy face as he picked up the drink. That's right. That Wu Ling raised the corners of his mouth, lifted his wine glass, and said, "We are just here drinking wine, eating vegetables, and slowly waiting for that Yifeng to bring someone to call the door. When all their people are here, the 3 of us brothers will take action together to help you wipe out those rubbish, as many as you can." Ha ha ha. Mao Lin drank the wine in his hand, raised his head and laughed. Now, he can sit back and relax completely. Just wait for the people from Yifeng and Baofeng Chamber of Commerce to come and die. At this time, several birds flew across the sky. Immediately after that, dozens of ghostly shadows swept into the sky. Standing in the sky and looking down at the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce below, his face was full of indifference. The next moment, 36 heavenly gangs and 72 earthshas followed closely on the flying monsters. The bodies of the huge monsters were organized together, casting a large shadow on the ground, giving people a great sense of oppression. And the 108 halls of Qingshanmen, with nearly 100,000 disciples, have surrounded the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce in 3 circles, preventing anyone from the Pingzhong Chamber of Commerce from escaping. Finally, another storm surged against the weather. It was Lu Qingshan with anger on his face. Angered, he also sacrificed the Peerless kitchen knife, which is enough to show how serious he is about this matter. President, it's not good, Yi Feng's people are calling at the door. Just as Mao Lin and the 3 martial arts masters were drinking, the previous housekeeper shouted again, and his anxious appearance caused the soles of his feet to stumble on the threshold, and the whole person rolled in directly. President Mao, you subordinates are really timid. Upon seeing this, one of the Wulings mocked with disdain. Hearing this, Mao Lin was full of embarrassment, and he quickly shouted to the butler heavily, I said, I'm drinking with the 3 adults, don't be so abrupt, besides, when you will call the door, there are 3 adults here, what's the big deal? But the president, they have a lot of people here. The butler added anxiously, we must not take it lightly. Noisy. However, Wu Ling didn't seem to want to listen to the butler's words, so he waved his arm directly. The butler turned into a rain of blood, and at the same time looked at Mao Lin, and said leisurely, President Mao, your people seem to be don't trust us. How could it be? Mao Lin hurriedly explained. What does he know as a little butler? How can he understand the power of the 3 adults? Just seeing that there are so many people in Yifeng will be frightened. Most are just to die. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.